Haven't.
Well, in time you've got a spare moment.
Okay.
To meet my house name.
I'd like to commence the workshop if I can. Just want to welcome everyone along, and a reminder that this workshop is being recorded. Footage from the workshop will be made available on our website by Friday of this week for a period of 2 months. I'll welcome a special guest tonight, Mark Parnell, the member of the South Australian Legislative Council and Parliamentary Leader of the Greens in South Australia. So welcome along tonight, Mark. Mark's going to assist us with the issue that Chris is going to bring forward, and really is here to answer the questions and clarify any points of view. Before I get to that though, I just want to say I aim to adjust the workshop program so that we can bring item 5 forward, which is in relation to the urban corridor zone discussion. So that's what we're going to be doing first. We have an apology from Monica, who's going to be a little bit late getting here, but she still intends to come. Bruce earlier on, but I haven't seen him tonight. Can I just confirm that the notes of the last workshop are acceptable? Has anyone got any comments? They seem pretty straightforward to me. If not, we'll move straight on to item 5, and if I could just ask Chris Newby to help us just by introducing it and discussing the topic. Thanks, Chris.
And thanks to Mark for coming along tonight. Briefly, Mark's introduced a disallowance motion to disallow the amendments to the legislation that established the Development Assessment Commission as the relevant authority for all development within the urban corridor zone that's greater than 4 stories in height. So Mark's written to elected members and to senior staff seeking some feedback on whether Council actually supports the disallowance motion, because obviously that's very important when it's based primarily on the, as I understand it, the initial response from the LGA at that time, where there were concerns raised about a lack of consultation. And some time has passed, and now that the legislation is essentially bedded in, but there's still an opportunity to revisit. So in preparing the presentation for tonight and the to Mark from Council, I thought it would be good to have Mark come along. And so, Mark, if you have any comments before I run through the presentation.
I might just say a couple of things. And thanks, Chris, and thank you all for the opportunity to speak to you. Chris did do me the courtesy of sending me the PowerPoint that he was going to use tonight, so I could see what the issues would be. And none of them, I should say, are a surprise. If we go back to first principles, these were regulations that came in on the very last day of parliamentary sitting before the election. So the end of November last year, the very last day, we're rushing through all of the bits of legislation that have been lingering around, and it was a bit of a frantic time, I've got to say, and the Government Gazette had these regulations in. And if you remember the media at the time, there were various mayors, I think was a good description of who they were mayors, saying, no one told us about this, you know, what's going on here? One mayor about it from a journalist, and as Chris alluded to, the Local Government Association expressed some concerns as well. So at that time, in a pre-election period, I said, well, I think this has got whiskers on it, and I'll move disallowance when Parliament resumes. And so Parliament's resumed, and I've moved disallowance. Again, in a pre-election context, the Liberals also said that they would support returning planning powers back to councils. So now it's on the agenda, and we all have to make a decision. So I did write to the affected councils and all elected members. One thing I should apologise for is that in the drafting, I meant to put a CC down the bottom just to make it clear that I'd sent it, because some councillors thought that they were the only one I'd sent it to, and they're very pleased. I wonder why he's sending it to me. You know, there's others who know more about this than I do. Anyway, I sent it to everyone. The issue is a fairly significant one, and the threshold question is, what is the role of local councils in the planning system? And it's a pretty fundamental question. And the way I see these regulations is part of an ongoing trend over many years to water down, devalue, disempower the role of local councils at the expense of central bodies. Now, I say that not just my 8 years in state parliaments, and I've spent that whole time on the ERD committee. So part of my job is to actually, we review all of the rezonings, we review all of the DPAs, but for 10 years prior to that I was the solicitor at the Environmental Defenders Office. So for 2 decades pretty well, I've been looking at the trends in planning and happy to debate it with people, but the way I see it, the role of councils is being diminished, the role of the state and central bodies such as the Development Assessment Commission is being increased. Now that may be the right response to the 21st century planning. It may be. I'm not convinced. I find that I'm batting a lot for local councils when they're in dispute with the state government, especially when the state government has ridden roughshod over a council and undone some examples. There was one out at, I think it was Onkaparinga, out at Flagstaff Hill, where the local council had done a great job trying to work out a shopping floor area, how much, what sort of shops did we need and where should they go. And then, of course, some big player comes in over the top, and what was going to be a small corner convenience type shopping centre became a mega mart type thing. And I'm thinking, well, council have done all the work. What right did the minister have to override them? Well, the right the minister has is that's how the Development Act is written. The minister has the final sign-off on all of these rezonings. But this is not so much about rezoning. This is about who is the decision maker for development applications. And the regulations basically say if it's more than 4 stories, it's no longer your responsibility. It's now the responsibility of the Development Assessment Commission, so the central body, and create a subcommittee, if you like, beneath the Development Assessment Commission, which will actually make the decisions. So it won't be your role, those of you who are on your development assessment panel, it won't be your role to assess these developments anymore. So the other point I'd make briefly is, when I said that it may well be the correct answer, we do need to have this debate about planning and the roles of councils, the roles of the minister, the roles of the parliament, and that's why the government set up, they got Mr Brian Hayes, 20 years after he did the last one, they said, you come back in and you do us another planning review. And I knew at the time that every reform we put forward to the Development Act, the government's response would be, it's premature. We can't possibly consider any changes to the development system while Mr Hayes' review is underway. And that, of course, didn't apply to the government's own major changes to the planning system, such as regulations. We basically readjust who the responsible authority is for making these decisions. So I think that this is part of a continuum. On this instance, I'm batting for councils who have told me that they would like to hang on to these powers. I'm open to the idea that a council might find that it's not capable or competent of dealing with certain types of development, and for them to perhaps relinquish the right to do it, but this is having the right relinquished for you. You don't actually get a call. You might think that you are quite able, you've got professional staff, you might think you're able to deal with a 5-storey apartment complex. Under these regs, it doesn't matter whether you think you can do it, you're not doing it. The state government's going to do it. And the final thing I'll say, and then I'll answer some questions, is the power that Parliament has in relation to regulations is an all or nothing power. In other words, and it's the same with regulations and with your council bylaws. Like if you've got a bylaw and we like 90% of it, but there's 10% of it we don't like, it's all or nothing. We throw the whole thing out. Same with regulations. And there's some aspects of these regulations that have merit, but unfortunately we can't pick and choose the bits we like. The whole lot stays or goes. If they are thrown out, then the status quo that existed previously would be reinstated, which means that councils would be responsible for developments of 4 stories or more, and your development assessment panel would be the primary decision-making body. Having said that, those of you who followed these things note that the state government always has the power, the day after a dissolution motion has gone through, to reinstate exactly the same regulations the very next day. And that sort of happened before. Now, I don't know whether they would do that if this motion was successful, but the point to note is that it wouldn't leave a vacuum. It wouldn't be as if there was no process to follow. It would just mean that it was the previous process, and presumably we'd then wait for the expert panel on planning, the Brian Hayes review, to what they say is the right allocation of responsibility between councils and the state, and then do a proper law reform process from that. So that was the object of the exercise. So far most councils and most councillors are writing back saying, yes, we're not happy with how it was done, and we're not happy with having these powers taken off us. We would rather go back to the previous situation. Now, what I've asked for is for the views. I'll still put the motion in Parliament, but what I want is to be able to quote accurately what elected members and what councils are saying. They're asked for examples, statistics, viewpoints.
Before we move on, just want to welcome Councillor Bruce Priest to the meeting. Okay, Chris, on here.
Okay, Mark's touched on a number of the points to the PowerPoint presentation and put the situation quite well, I think, in terms of where a dissolution motion would leave council. It would leave council as the decision-making body. But let's roll through from the start. So the variation regulations, in terms of the establishment of the relevant authority, briefly at approximately the same time as the Inner Metro Growth DPA amendments went through and were gazetted. The responsibility for the assessment of some of the applications that would subsequently be lodged in the Urban Corridor Zone was transferred to the Development Assessment Commission. At the same time, a DAC subcommittee, so the Inner Metropolitan Development Assessment Commission subcommittee, was established, and we subsequently nominated 2 of our independent DAC members to be a part of that subcommittee. David Cook was subsequently appointed. So that's where council's representation in terms of applications of greater than 4 stories only within the Urban Corridor Zone actually sits. So it has been removed from council, as you're all aware.
Sorry, Chris, just a question. Sorry, I came in late. Variation. What is this one about here? So I can get my head around this. What is this one here?
So
was there a government's taking office or wanting to establish?
yes, the variation regulations, there are 5 key components of that, and I'm just walking through the implications of those 5 key components.
Of what the state government wants to do?
Of what the state government has done.
Has done. Sorry. So they've taken all this off of us.
4 stories.
And from 4 stories and up, so that, It appears, Mark, you're the only one who's fighting on behalf of the residents and ratepayers of the city of South. So,
Can we just carry on with the presentation?
So briefly, summary, the DAC is the relevant authority for development greater than 4 stories. If an application for 4 stories is lodged with council, that application is actually able to be varied, so council remains a relevant authority and they can add an additional story, and it doesn't trigger a reallocation of that proposal to the DAC, which is an interesting little anomaly within the legislation and the approach taken. Similarly, a height limit of 4 stories in the Urban Corridor Zone, as described in our development plan, doesn't mean that if something is lodged for 5 stories that council has any legislated ability to comment on that application.
Just to clarify that, because Alan was a bit confused with that. So
That's the first bit.
you were saying if it's 4-story lodge, you add one.
If it's lodged with us as 4 stories, if it's lodged as 4 stories with council, and the applicant subsequently chooses to vary that application during the assessment process to add an additional story, then council remains the relevant authority. Whereas if it's lodged as 5 stories with the DAC, subsequently varied to 4 stories, the authority would remain with the DAC. So it would only be if they withdrew it and re-lodged it.
So just a question in just that point, Gunn. So, you know, when we've done all the new DAC stuff, particularly on Dingham Maynooth Road, we moved some areas that we allowed, I think, 5 and 6 stories. So even though they're in our thing, they would still go to the government.
Correct. That's based solely on the height of the proposal.
So with the process of 5 and up, are the DAC obliged to come and ask us our view on it? Obliged is the first question. And secondly, would in the normal course of their assessment they choose to ask us our view on it?
Answer to the first part of your question, no, they're not obliged to do that. There is no legislated referral. However, in response to your second question, they do engage with council administration during the planning assessment process, so the design review process that's undertaken by the government architect. So that is now a mandatory referral. So the mandatory referral for the DAC is to the government architect, who undertakes design review, supported by the Office for Design and Architecture of South Australia. As part of that process, they engage with relevant government agencies, so Housing SA, Department of Transport, and they also seek comments from council on local matters. So it's fairly limited scope in terms of what we feedback on, but we've engaged in that process and found that to be highly beneficial in terms of the ultimate. Okay, so the third component of the variation is that applications are to be lodged with the Development Assessment Commission and not with Council. It's really just an administrative component of it, but it means that we don't really hear about it until such time as it's referred to us. And as noted previously, there is no legislative referral. Part 4, the variation was remove the statutory referral. Part 5 was establishing the statutory referral to the government architect. So, Chris.
So it's lodged, if it's lodged, development applications lodged with us, so we get the fees for that. So if it's lodged with DAC, they get fees, and they are the same amount of fees?
That's correct. The fees are set by the legislation, so it doesn't vary according to who the relevant authority is. So there are fees also set out for the lodgement, for the planning assessment, and also the referral to agencies that are statutory referrals under the Act. Are there any? So that's the variation regulations in a nutshell. New authority and a referral to the government architect, but not a statutory referral to council.
Just before you go on, could you just explain the referral to the government architect? Is that something the DAC can choose to do, or they have to do? And what's involved in that referral?
The referral is a mandatory referral under the Act for all development of 5 stories or more, or that exceeds 4 legislation's frame. So 4 stories plus rooftop garden, if there's a structure associated with that rooftop garden, would trigger that mandatory. There are 2 ways that can be progressed. Either through a pre-lodgement process where a would-be developer approaches the Development Assessment Commission or DIPSI, is assigned a case manager. They then facilitate or coordinate the provision of preliminary feedback and discussion on the proposal at the early design concept stage before it's really bedded down. That then informs the government architect, who is has a number of different architects to draw on. There's approximately 20 or 21 off the top of my head that they refer to through the Office for Design and Architecture, who then provide feedback on the proposal in terms of how it sits with, not only with the development plan, but with sort of best practice in design and construction. And so it's a fairly rigorous process, and there's a number of reviews that are undertaken by the government architect. The other option is what they call a cold lodged application. That's where if someone fronts up to DAC and says, I want to lodge this development application, they can't refuse to accept it. So they must accept it, and then it gets referred. So it's cold lodged, it goes through a similar process, but by the time an application is ready to be lodged, it's normally in a much more considered form that suits comprehensive design review. Proposals that have come to council that we've actually sent on for design review and seen some fairly substantial changes to them at the early stage.
Sorry. Chris? Or
Yes.
ladies first.
Oh, thank you. So, so it goes off to DAC, the Commission, and so there is no consultation that DAC sits in camera on this. So nobody gets to know about or discuss it. Is that?
It's consultation in terms of public notification. So they do undertake public notification if required under the development plan. So it doesn't trigger a different process, doesn't trigger a different assessment process. And I think this is one of the points where it's worth really emphasising that it's the same process, it's just a different authority. The DAC still have to assess it against the relevant provisions of Council's development plan. They don't just pick it up and say it's a good idea or a bad idea. They undertake a fairly rigorous assessment process undertaken by planners like myself, like my colleagues. They undertake that process and make an informed and considered decision at the end of it. But at the end of the day, it's not Council or Council's development assessment panel making that decision. It is the development assessment.
My point was more to the provisions, or what I see a lack of, that once it goes to the Development Assessment Commission, then our Development Assessment panels are usually open to the public. But I just query about the Development Assessment Commission, how open they would be.
My understanding is that it is.
Yes, that's one of the points I was making. That I'll say a bit more about perhaps later.
Bruce, did you?
Yeah, oh, sorry. So this disallowance motion is what Mark Pennell wants to bring up?
Well, I've moved it, and
Right.
I've said that it will, to give time for people to give feedback. And I've got to say, if the feedback is universally, Mark, you got rocks in your head, we love it, well, it'll go nowhere, but that's not the feedback I'm getting.
Yeah.
So come to a vote in September.
Quite frankly, Mark, I mean, they forced that upon us at a cost to council, and state government forces, state Labor government forced that on us.
Chris, can I just say,
I'll talk about costings and all that, which is
just want to go through the presentation and then we're going to have a discussion here.
Oh, okay, all right.
Okay, so
Just one other question about the referral, mandatory referral under the DAC process. The disallowance motion gets up. Will council pick up that mandatory referral power to the government architect?
No, the mandatory referral to the government architect form part of the same legislative amendment. So as Mark mentioned in his opening, it's all of it. So it's the 90% is the DAC and the 10% is the referral to the government architect. So
I might just say that the government has said that they're going to give councils access to the government architect process, so there'd be nothing to stop a council going to the government architect, and there'd be nothing to stop developers using the pre-lodgement sort of process. It just won't be as formalised in regulations until, you know, we have another go after Mr Hayes has reported and hopefully get a holistic set of proposals to change the development other than, well, I think this is a piecemeal approach.
And one of the implications of that approach really relates to what Bruce mentioned in terms of the financial implications for council, because the services provided by ODASA come at a fairly substantial cost. It's not, if it was a statutory referral, then we'd require that the applicant pay a fee to council to facilitate that referral. We then reimburse the Development Assessment Commission on a quarterly basis for those referrals. So we wouldn't, as council, we wouldn't be incurring the cost of that advice. So it's similar to other state agency referrals where we refer it to the Department of Transport, we get feedback. My understanding is that the government architect will come at a cost. To date, we have informally referred 2 applications that didn't qualify for design review. We've referred that to the government architect and undertaken that process, and that has been done at no cost to council. But I don't see how that's viable in the future unless the state government comes to the party.
They were going to keep the freebies going. That was my understanding.
Well, if they keep the freebies going,
Just to be really clear, under the current rules, the mandated referral gives us better design, I assume, otherwise it wouldn't bother, and we don't have to pay for it. They don't get the fees, I hear that, but we don't have to pay for the mandatory referral. If the disallowance motion gets up and we tell a developer we want to do it, number one, they can say no. Number two, we would incur a cost that the developer may or may not choose to reimburse us.
correct. We could
incur a cost.
Can I just clarify, the legal position is that any development more than 4 stories in one of these corridor zones has to be referred to the government architect. The government architect has 8 weeks to come up with its decision or come up with its recommendations, and the decision maker, being this new subcommittee of DAC, must have regard to what the government architect said. It's not binding, but it's regard. So in other words, it's a persuasive piece of information. If the government architect says this building's just rubbish and you should be saying no, then you'd like to think the decision maker would sort of take that on board. But they're not bound to take it. It's regard only rather than direction is the other word they use in the law.
That's correct.
Just to be perfectly clear, if the disallowance motion doesn't get up and council's then in control, and we ask a developer to take it to the design review process, the developer says yes, and there may or may not be a fee, we get the report back from the government architect. Does council's panel have to have due regard to the government architect's report?
No, because the regard provision under the Act is in relation to the variation regulations, which this disallowance motion seeks to remove from the legislation. There will be no, so it is linked. There will be no mandatory referral. There is no requirement to have regard.
I think the point is that of all the different agencies that have development applications referred to them, a small proportion are what we call compulsory referrals, and a whole lot of others are sort of voluntary. So you get groups like, the Health Department, the EPA, there's lots of issues that get referred to them. They don't have to, and similarly, they don't have to take account of what the advice is that comes back.
Right.
But you're right, this is mandated advice, whereas you'd presume that, the Highways Department, for example, anything on a major road, they always go to transport, and the advice that comes back is, take it or leave it.
That's just for those who haven't been involved in Council's Development Assessment Panel. That is correct to a degree. There are, in relation to the Department for Transport, in some instances they have the power of directions. They can actually direct the relevant authority to refuse an application or to impose certain conditions. In other circumstances, the relevant authority must have regard, so that which means the relevant authority can weigh up the information that's provided from the Department for Transport and say some independent advisors as well, and have regard to those pieces of advice and ultimately make a decision on the application. But they cannot be directed. So that's where there is a difference, and it really points in the direction of the authority or power that the government architect has. The DAC has to have regard. Comments to make.
So could you conclude your presentation, because we've got general questions and general comments after that.
So the queries from Mark were really around whether council supports this motion. So the assessment of the multi-million-dollar, multi-storey development is a complex process and requires advice from a range of independent advisors. The fees that we receive as council are typically not sufficient to cover the costs associated with seeking this independent advice. Basically, the fees received cover approximately 25 to 30% of the costs incurred by council in being a relevant authority under the Act. So it is an issue where we are asked to take on additional responsibilities under the Act. So where appropriate, the DAC should play a role. So it'll remove, if we support the disallowance motion, if we get through the Legislative Council, then it will reinstate Council as the relevant authority, but remove that mandatory referral to the Government Architect. Mark's asked for views on the level of consultation undertaken in putting through these amendments to the legislation. I mean, the feedback initially was that the consultation was inadequate, quite substantially inadequate. It was a surprise. So I think there was a good level of engagement with this council in relation to the policy formulations, the actual development plan amendment, but this sort of hit us at beyond the 12th hour. So it was a surprise. Any particularly difficulties that these regulations pose for council is really around that there is no mandatory referral, so it leaves us wondering whether we actually have right to comment and how those comments will be treated. So Government Architect, the DAC must have regard to the comments that are provided, whereas council's participation is a little less clear. Any statistics? Well, since the introduction of the DPA, we've seen a rather substantial increase in activity in terms of development applications lodged. We've only received, or know of one application that's been received that does exceed 4 stories in height. So these figures behind us that show around a $20 million increase over the same quarter in the previous year shows a substantial increase in the level of interest in developing in Prospect. So that's, I mean, the totals down the bottom reflect that, you know, this, the policy change has had an impact on the level of interest and the type of development that we're seeing. So we're having to very quickly come up to speed with assessing a completely different form of development to what Prospect has traditionally seen. Any alternative arrangements that may be preferable? I'd have to say that the legislated referral to council, if the current legislation stays in place, a mandatory referral to council would be desirable. And then we would have the opportunity to put it to the DAC, to open it up to public scrutiny and informing feedback to the Development Assessment Commission. And lastly, Mark has really opened the door and said anything else to be conveyed to the members of Parliament. So I've put on my hat that does look at the budget and said, well, there's insufficient cost recovery for all the activities that council has to undertake as a relevant authority. It's grossly inadequate. So it puts the burden on council, as it puts I think an unreasonable impost on the budgetary constraints of council. We're more than happy to assess development applications and ensure that they comply with their approvals and to undertake amendments to our development plan to ensure that they're consistent with council's strategic direction as well as the state's strategic plan. But we're running at a loss in doing that. We don't have very good powers for compliance and enforcement. So if we're going to, from a staff perspective, I should flavour all this has been prepared in isolation without consultation with the elected members. That's what a workshop environment is all about. But there's insufficient cost recovery mechanisms, and that's something that I like to bring up in any opportunity, and as we're doing so through the planning reform. So, I've prepared a response circulated to elected members, suggesting that to be circulated to elected members, suggesting that the disallowance our minds up for us not supported, and through that's my perspective, and this is my recommendation to elected members, and it's a point for discussion. I'll take your feedback, but that it's not supported, but that the legislative referral to the Government Architect is essential. The statutory referral to council should be introduced, and fees and penalties should also be increased so that we've got a greater ability to perform to the expectations that the community have of us in undertaking our role as a relevant authority under the Development Act. Okay. Any questions or comments?
What I'd like to do now is just maybe go around the table, starting with Bruce. I know you had some comments earlier.
Shall I go around the table, you say, Mark?
That's fine. You can let.
Look, thanks very much for this, Mark. I'm a great supporter of this. I think you're the only person in State Parliament that I can remember has actually come to us with this sort of thing, stood up for councils. To me, this is state Labor governments act like fascist states of the 30s, enforcing these regulations on us. They forced that onto us, took the powers away from council and forced it on us at a great expense to council without any giving us back the money that it costs us to run that, and sometimes only sit for 5 minutes. This again is an attack on the councils again, to take away the powers of council. I mean, soon they want to dislodge and get rid of councils, I suppose, the next step of this state Labor government, to build up their own power bases. And I thank you for this motion. I'm supportive of it. I'd like to see you go a lot further actually by putting in this to have the state governments reimburse councils for their costs of DAPT, the ability of councils to recover their costs involved in the work that our planning managers stated. I'm sure he can give you all the facts and figures of costs of ours, and every single council in South Australia be involved in costs where we lose money. So that's things that I'd like you to go further. In fact, even disbanding that, let councils go back to councils making decisions. But I'm quite concerned about 4 stories and above being forced on the residents in the city of Prospect. I don't think 4 stories actually fit. We're going to have something built on Prospect Road, 4 stories, which will not fit. I'll hopefully be able to have a say against the 4 story that's going to be built on the corner of Rose Street. Starters, it hasn't got enough car parks. I think it's going to allow 26 car parks, I think, for the size of the building and how many people are going to be there. Picture theatres, 26 car parks, I'm led to believe. 53 car parks. Okay, I'll stand there, be corrected. 53 car parks. Inadequately, not enough car parks being allowed in this site. Gravely concerned about that because they're going to end up parking in the residential streets. This power will be taken away for us that we can't say to the developer, you're going to have more car parks. So I thank you for this motion and I'm quite supportive of you on this.
Thanks, Bruce. Christina?
Yes, I'd just like to clarify with Chris about what was the main reason that you don't support this allowance?
I'll do.
Briefly, I see great merit in what the Government Architect and the Office for Design and Architecture are doing. This disallowance motion would remove that mandatory referral. We've also had a very positive relationship with the department in putting together the guidelines for this. So I don't see the need for the legislation to revert back to council being the relevant authority.
Any further comments, Christina?
Yeah, certainly. Yes, well, I do support the disallowance motion, and I think to me it's more a matter of the whole transparency issue, that the council and community seem to be even further removed from having any say in what affects basically their biggest capital asset, their homes. And I think that's a fundamental flaw in all this latest flurry of planning. And I think that councils know their patch, but I cannot guarantee that any members of the DAC know that our patches, or council's patch as well as what they may. I wonder if they even come out and sort of visit the sites. I would query. I've heard. Also about the fact that about the cost shifting. Yet again, we have another example now of cost shifting. And we're going to be damned whether we do or not support the electric allowance, because I can see, get the crystal ball out. You don't need to have your own crystal ball. That if the government architect is going to be so very busy, as I suspect he may be in his department, I think that's going to wear very thin, and the government will be wanting to recover their costs. Like I say, we want to certainly recover any costs that we may have. And Bruce is quite right with the Development Assessment Panel legislation. We've had to wear all the extra costs of paying the expert panelists on that. Yeah, so I think they're most probably mine. And also I think that, well, if Mark Parnell is obviously taking on board all of these things, there's nothing stopping him putting further legislation at another time to still redress some of the wrongs.
Doing it for 8 years.
Yes, precisely.
Fails every time.
So, yes, well, okay, so that's about it.
Thanks for that, Christina. Scott?
I'm pretty much like Christina. I think that, to me, and this is what I spoke about during the workshops and we were talking about it in at council. It would just seem crazy if you're a developer why you put 4-storey when you can bypass council and go straight through to do 5 stories. So, yes, I'm supportive of the motion, pretty much around the secrecy and whatnot as well. I think it's just the main thing is that the biggest concerns that if they live, one block behind Prospect Road, they're fearful that a 6-storey building could go up there and the council could have no say about it. So I'm very mindful of that, and I'll support it.
Thanks for that. Alan?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things, thanks. First of all, and it's not a whole history lesson, Mark, but it's sometimes what makes up my brain, that apart from Christina sitting around the table, I've sort of been part of council for nearly 20 years. 4 years when I took on my mate and it didn't work, but put that to one side, I've physically been here 18 years. But in that time, and I've seen a massive change, and I should say right at the beginning, all the amendment stuff we put through, the DAP things we put through, while I disagree with a lot at the start with that, I've always, in the end, I think, voted with it. So I'm not saying that everyone else done something and I don't do something. So, my hand's gone up. But when I first come on council and you've seen the people around the nails with the school, and I think the first thing I dealt with was one of these phone towers when that lady that used to open all the fridges, Trish Worth, she was our minister at the time, and she come out, and so people got involved in something that was being built around us. And we used to come to council, we'd talk about things, and we used to have 1 week an ordinary council, another one, we went to these committee type things. And so the whole of the council discussed it, and residents like behind and that sort of thing, they'd bring up something that fit into what we talked about, and most probably now looking back, some of it was a little bit wrong, that we'd decide that wasn't going to happen, a building wasn't going to happen, and then we used to put it on the poor people like Chris up the end and say, yes, we're going to vote against that. You go away now and find the reasons that we did. Go into the look and do it, that sort of. So I've seen a change from that, and then to the DAP coming and things like that. Some of it I believe was good. It was happening through because there was people like me that aren't developers, that aren't architects, all those sort of things that fit in. So it's more what I can visually think, listen to other people and see. So it's good to have, and that's some of the bodies we got now on our panel, that you have some people with an expertise that you can put A to B and follow it through. But I slowly start to get to the stage, and at the picture theatre, and I might add, I don't think it's too bad at the moment, but the picture theatre that's going up and things like that, we now have just no say. and it just doesn't have, well, yeah, we have no right in it, you know, it doesn't mean we haven't got any say in it, but I get a bit worried of that, to be taken away from those local people. And to go a bit further, to follow up, we start giving it to someone further afield again. And that's not any criticism of them even, it's a criticism of coming back where it happens. So I would like to see your motion get up, but I wouldn't like to see your motion get up and just end and be there. It's got to really take into account of some of the things Chris said and David, I think, pointed out a bit earlier. Anything that's even good, it doesn't matter if it's bad or good, but particularly if it's good, costs us more money. And no one has a tall building around by me, and no doubt they most probably never will, because they're nearly only 1 or 2 story places. But we got to pay because to sort of view what's happening on Prospect Road, the Churchill Road. It fits into that overall cost. So to me, the cost is a very big concern that comes into it. The fact we have, and I've known you actually for quite a while too, Mark, that if you could jump up on the table with a magic wand and say we can consult with people and how to do it. I've been to some meetings, we've had groups standing on a street corner, and then the person walks away and says, oh, no one said anything about me to that, and you just finished talking for 20 minutes. So I wouldn't know how you do consultation perfectly, you know, because I think you can do it with them. We do it with the budget, we do it with planning and stuff, and actually have that plan that went through. And then you can talk to someone 6 hours later and say, oh, I didn't know that was on, I didn't agree with that. So I go along with what you say because I think we should go there. But I'd be a bit unhappy if it ended up being a result that we didn't have that other body to go to, but the cost comes into it. And I thank you for coming.
Thanks for that. Just want to welcome Monica Lee, Councillor Monica.
Sorry, I'm
Yeah, Mark, please.
Thanks, Mark. Look, a couple of things. First of all, Mark, thank you for coming. In my short 3.5 years on council, I think you're the first state member, apart from a very short-lived minister, who's come along to talk to us. So I think that's really good. So thank you for that. To answer your questions, I think about what I want as an individual within Prospect, what I want as a councillor, and I'm also a DAP member. So what I want as a DAP member in terms of development. And I was just sort of writing some of them down. And what I want is I want good design. I want something that's timely. I want something that's streamlined, so it's not over bureaucratic for people making applications. And I want to promote good development. And they're probably the 4 cornerstones for me. And where I struggle a little bit with the disallowance motion is the issue around mandatory referrals. And when it came out, we had the government architect come here a little while ago to talk to us, and they talked a little bit about the role in the mandatory referral process. What I was really excited about was that design element. And we've had lots of debate here about height and width and length and all that sort of thing. But, and Monica, I think, more than anyone else makes the point repeatedly, it's about good design. And I think, don't ask me to read Monica, but I think she's right. It's about good design. That's really what it's about. And so I guess the question for you is I mean, the disallowance motion is, it's been introduced, I understand. Is there a reason, I'm just interested from your perspective why it wasn't an amendment to the current, I know we talked a little bit about all or nothing, but a simple amendment which would be a referral to DAC if determined by council would kind of solve the problem. Those councils who don't want to be part of doing it themselves and don't have the capacity, that's great, they can make a decision to refer either per project or as a general rule. Other councils, and we might be one of those, that might say, well, actually, no, we want to do it in-house. So can I?
Well, the answer quickly is I can't, because we don't have the capacity to add extra things to the regs that would improve them. And I agree with all, well, not all, but most of what Chris has said. You know, the fees are inadequate. The rest of your ratepayers are subsidising development applicants because you're not recovering all your costs. Yeah, if we could have tinkered with it, and, but mind you, if we could have done that, we would have had mandatory referral, but with the council in charge and the state government picking up the tab. I mean, there's other ways we could have done it. The tools I've got are very blunt, and it's either don't touch it or chuck it all out. And
but by chucking it all out, you can introduce something in its place.
No, I can't. The government can. And I'd hope that, I'll certainly be talking to I've had my first briefing with the government, and I should actually just mention this. People, you might think, how many of these applications are there? You know, we spend a lot of time talking about something that doesn't happen much. One in Prospect, you're right. 7 altogether since these came in. 1 in Prospect, 1 in Unley, and 5 in Norwood, Payneham, St Peters. And I think they were having a similar thing to this last night. I haven't heard what the result of that was. So we're not talking about the bulk of sort of 1 a month in 7 months. But yes, if I could have just done what we do with legislation and strike out the bits you don't like, put better things in, that would have been far preferable. But I don't have that power. Sorry.
No, just being changed parties maybe, and then you could.
I've got to be the minister. From the minister I can do it.
So that's where I'm struggling with it. I think the intent is right, and I think broadly I support it, but I wouldn't support anything that removes the capacity to have good design, and I haven't made up my mind yet whether this totally removes it, whether there's some way that we can still ensure that happens. I also, just to finish off, think that it's really important for councils to be, and I don't like using the control word, but it's about being in control. I think Christina's right. Council know the areas really well. I've sat on DAP only for about 2 years. We've got some really talented people in the DAP who know the area, they know the area well. They're not, councillors are talented as well on the whole, but the expert members we have add a real value to it. And I just think we've got the capacity to do that and we should be allowed to continue to do, and that's my sort of support for it. It's just that mandatory, that's what I guess I'm just a little bit unsure about. But thanks again for coming.
No, thank you.
Thanks for that. David?
I think the Deputy Mayor puts my position very well. And again, I just want to say thank you, as was Mark did, for coming out and listening. That's something that was absent from the first process. And it's obvious that the expert panel is exactly the right place to consider this matter, and that's where it should have gone. I may or may not have suggested that to the Minister. When the community talks to me about projects, houses, shopping centres, whatever it is, almost always it's about design issues. Their criticism is almost always about design. It's very rarely whether it should have been a warehouse or a house or a shop or a school or a petrol station. It's the land use part of the planning system seems to be pretty well understood, and in most cases the answer is obvious, and our plan reflects clustering of retail and residential being in enclaves and not dispersed with factories. So the community seems to me to have a really heightened concern about design outcomes. My primary motivation with this question that you've put to us is, will this give us better design outcomes or will it not? My concerns, the same as the Deputy said, that we will lose mandatory referral, we will lose the due regard clause, and that means we'll lose enforceability at court should the developer appeal the decision. Should council impose its own kind of design review if we were in control? Now we don't go to court often. Our team run a very tight ship here and work very hard with our applicants. But people who apply to build things over 4 levels are generally more serious, more experienced developers who have a team of consultants that includes lawyers and planning lawyers. That's not always the case with the general run of business that we have. So my concern is if this goes and nothing else replaces it, we will lose that mandated design process. And I agree with the staff. I think that process is a very good process. And it reflects my perception of the community who are mostly concerned about design. And design including everything, traffic, car parking, appearance, relationship with the street, all of that is bundled into design. Secondly, the skill set to assess these things is not a skill set that we, as I understand it, and having spoken with the staff about this, that we possess. We employ people to deal with house additions, houses, shops, commercial additions, a little bit of industrial. We don't generally employ people to deal with 5-level to 8-level developments. That's all that can happen under this regulation that affects us. So therefore we may feel compelled, if we're assessing it, to go and hire someone on a temporary basis to help us with the assessment. And I kind of think, boy, we've got to be careful what we wish for. We may end up hiring a planner part-time, certainly more money I spend on traffic consultancy, maybe more money spent on architectural consultancy. Maybe there's a waste management component because you can't easily turn into lots of green bins on the street, so how do we manage that? And we'll carry all that cost. Because at the moment, I kind of like this idea that if the government wants to have their panel assess it, will they cover all the costs, including the mandatory referral costs and everything else? However, I agree there are problems with the consultation. What was introduced is a fairly blunt instrument. I do agree strongly that council should be a mandatory referral body as well, but not send us a letter saying here it is. We should be actually asked under legislation what's our view. Whether that goes to our DAP or whether it goes to council is a question I haven't answered yet, but anyway, it's an interesting question because that has implications in the city as I understand it. Notably, the community consultation doesn't change, so I don't believe that's a risk with the disallowance or not, because if it's a category 2, as I understand it, Chris, it goes to the same neighbours as would if we're in control. So I heard some comments before, but the community consultation under the law doesn't change, so I don't think that's part of the problem or the solution. So in essence, I think a local authority response is okay, like a disallowance motion would be okay if we had the skills available locally, or we could get fully recompensed for all the money it costs us to assess these types of applications, and we don't, and we could mandate the design process from council level, and we could defend that referral to design review at court, which is really what I'm after. Otherwise, it's not worth the paper it's written on. And otherwise, in the absence of all of that, I think keep what we've got and keep pressing for mandatory referral to council. Because whilst I don't agree with everything in it, I think it's a better compromise at the moment. And I'm lobbying the expert panel to take it on board with their recommendations and give us a better answer.
Okay, thanks for that. Ashley.
Also, thank you for coming, Mark. I too am a member of DAP, and after the formalities of every meeting, the chair says, all right, who wants to talk first? And I always butt in straight away and say, the architects. Why? Design, 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 design. Those are the guys that can look at their plan, educate us, and really tell us about fenestration. I didn't even know the word existed. They pick things that the rest of us wouldn't pick, and it's a tremendous wealth of information. It's made a really big difference, I think, to the design of a number of the properties around Prospect, having them involved. You could reasonably argue that we don't have control anyway. The DAP is 7 members, 4 of which are independent, 3 of which are councillors. We already are statistically not as relevant as we used to be. I'm very much in favour of that process because I remember when I first came to council, the council was the body, and the number of times I sat there and people voted against. You would hand your resident, because most developers are residents, you'd hand them development plans, they would come back, the staff would say, yeah, they've totally agreed with the plan, and we would vote against it. And you'd sit there in a meeting and say, why? So I don't like it. That was the reason given. Christine might remember there were 2 or 3 people who constantly said, didn't like it. You had no power. So I like the DAP. I like the expertise it brings in. In terms of this process, for me, the ability to go constantly to a higher authority in terms of design, the design architect, the Office for Architecture and Design, is worth its weight in gold. I mean, we struggle every year to meet our budget, and we really struggle this year. And yet here we can get so much thrown in terms of design, advice, process, everything. We don't have, as Chris has said, we don't have the expertise. We can go up to 8 stories currently on High Street and currently go. We just don't have that sort of expertise. To bring that sort of expertise on board on a when you need it basis, it would cost us an arm and a leg. It's not a 5-minute job. And that sort of funding, you get 3 or 4 or 5 applications, admittedly only 1 so far, it starts to cost a lot of money. We don't have the expertise. We don't want to certainly, nobody around this table wants to hire somebody for all of those things as they come, and hopefully more will arrive and start making our rate funding a lot more beneficial to us. But for me, the ability to really hand this to another DAP, you know, right now our DAP, the council doesn't have the numbers. It's not too different going elsewhere with vastly more expertise. They can call in anybody they like. They can work with any government department. They have easy access to everybody, and it costs us nothing. As against currently, as several people have said, right now, the whole thing costs council. We lose on every application we look at. And on major applications, that's where you really lose. And here, it's a freebie, but you've got the best of design. And those of us on DAP know how helpful that has already been in the one big application that went to them. Despite we've got fabulous architects working for us, they came back with even more help. And we certainly freebie advice. I concur with acting director, is that what you're at now? With Chris, that I think it's in our interest as a council to go down this path because of the expertise that suddenly attaches to us at no cost. And we will win if design and design work in our favour. And I think that's the great offering that comes from this. I don't see any loss. Our job to me is get your development plan right. Then anybody should be able to take your development plan if you put the work in, and maybe that's where sometimes we go wrong. It's not the most exciting episode. But if you get your development plan right, it shouldn't matter who looks at it and controls it. It just shouldn't matter.
Thanks for that. And Monica, I know you arrived late. I don't know if you picked up the gist of the meeting.
Yeah.
Any comments?
Only to say that, like, I didn't hear what you guys had to say, and I do apologise again for being late. But the Deputy Mayor, the Mayor, and Councillor Dixon, they certainly reflect my sentiment. When the State Architect came to speak to us, Mark, he spoke of a very rigorous process. And for me it is. I bang on about design all the time. And we have two-storey developments that people complain about because they're ugly. Imagine a 4- and 5-storey development. If we get it wrong, imagine the outcry with that. But what he explained was an extremely rigorous process. It's not just a matter of saying, yep, whatever, go for it. They come to the design team, it goes back. They come, it goes back. It just goes on and on. And I think that's really, really important. And I would be concerned that that process doesn't exist anymore. And as people have said, we just can't afford that process for ourselves. So the danger is that we're left with 4 and 5 stories of ugly for a very, very long time. So I understand your sentiment, but I would be very reluctant to let go of what's proposed because forever is a long time when people are investing 4 and 5-storey buildings. I don't really want to comment more because I didn't get to hear everything that was said, but yeah, and unless we have the cost paid, we have control and the state government pays for the cost for us, I don't think that's going to happen. At least there is a process in place, and I think that's very important.
Okay, what I'd like to do is to bring the meeting to a conclusion for this. Mark, did you want to respond in any way?
What I might do is I tend to, when I go to things like this, I'm listening to what people are saying, and I write my to-do list. And my to-do list is, I've got 2 columns. There's one is if it looks like the disallowance will succeed, and that'll depend on the Liberals. If the Liberals stick with what they said before the election, then it will succeed. Liberals plus Greens need, I think, one other MLC, and that's enough for a disallowance to go through. The other thing I should have said is it's a bit it's different to normal legislation, which has to go through both houses. Disallowance is either house, right? So basically, Liberals, Greens plus one other, the regulations would go. Now, in that column, if the regulations are to go, then what I'll be doing, because I think that the points that everyone's made are excellent, I will invite the government to prepare a substitute set of regulations, which they could then bring in straight away, basically ensure the role of the government architect is maintained, but with the council as the decision maker, and invite them to fix up the cost regime that, well, number of aspects of it, but there's the cost recovery, just the fact that you're subsidising it, and also making sure that councils have free access to the design review process, which, as has already been said, there's two parts of it. The voluntary stuff, they just go voluntarily, and there's this sort of inner metro pre-lodgement pack, and it sort of explains the rigorous process, argy-bargy, which I think is fantastic, because if you can get more things fixed before someone is so locked in with their plans that they can't afford to change them, then it does, I think, result in better outcomes. So that's in the column that says if the disallowance has got the numbers, then we'll go down that path. If it looks like it doesn't have the numbers, if the libs aren't on side, for example, then there's a couple of other things I think we can still do. The libs were toying with the idea that maybe the problem is the 4-storey or more, and they were thinking maybe if it was 8. And so that's now. I must admit, I think 8 stories. If you've only ever done as a planner 2 stories, and all of a sudden you're given an 8, it might be some challenges there. I accept that. So that might be some sort of change that could be made. I don't know. My personal view is that a lot of these developers they're getting the zoning through for 8s, and they're trying to sell them off the plan, and they're not selling because people aren't ready for 8. They're ready for 4 and 5, I think. 3, 4 and 5. I don't think people are that ready for 8. My personal view. The market is speaking. So if I don't have the numbers, then talk with the libs about their 8-storey proposal. The other one is if it is going to stay as DAC as the decision maker, at least can we get Schedule 8 of the regulations amended so that you are also a mandatory referral agency, so they have to talk to the local council. So they're the two schools of thought. And I should just say that, I love this stuff, and I've worked in this area forever. This isn't sort of a particular die-in-the-ditch issue for me. I'm sort of passionate about getting good planning, and I agree with what people are saying about design. I put this forward because councillors asked me to. Councillors were outraged when this came through, and I said, okay, I'll move disallowance. And the final thing I'll say is suggestions been made, what other sort of ideas are there. I did bring with me this little document which I prepared about a year ago called the Dirty Dozen. 12 things wrong with the planning system in South Australia and South. And this was effectively an afternoon me spent putting some ideas based on my 20 years experience for Brian Hayes and his people, but I'm happy to leave you a copy of this. And you can see it does have a lot of stuff in here which emphasises access to information, public participation, the right to challenge bad decisions, because that's the perspective that I bring to this debate.
Okay, so from here, there's going to be a report to Council that Chris will prepare. So there'll be a formal opportunity for you to have a debate. So that'll happen at the next Council meeting, I understand, Chris. So with that, I think we'd like to conclude this part of the workshop. We'll take a break for 5 minutes, but could you join with me in thanking Mark? Break.
That's right. I know how welcoming you are. I'll be back every week.
If you want to. We're here virtually every week.
So we were supposed 4 and 4. What do you normally get?
Oh.
There are 2 buttons to push.
I just keep coughing and it'll turn to me.
Okay, we'll recommence the workshop after the break, and the next item is the Eastern Region Public Health Plan, and Brenda is going to help us with it.
So elected members might recall from last workshop that I presented some information about the Eastern Regional Public Health Plan. I'm not too sure if anybody would like me to sort of recap on this discussion from last week, but no, happy to sort of move on to it. I mean, a quick summary is that essentially there's part of the South Australian Public Health Act is that councils have a public health plan, and there's an option for councils to join up with other councils, other constituent councils, and do a regional plan, and that's what this council is doing through EHA, through Eastern Health Authority, and to that end, the task has been actually contracted out to Healthy Environs as a contractor to work with EHA and working with the constituent councils to produce the public health plan. So essentially the last workshop, elected members asked that rather than actually wait until the new council can actually vote on the draft for public consultation, that instead it comes back to an early workshop for elected members to have a look at the plan. And so what I'm planning to do tonight is quickly go through the plan and just sort of draw out some of the key themes and allow discussion. So I did actually have it distributed to you all. It's a 72-page document, so I'm sure you probably didn't have time to have a look at it, but hopefully...
It's not mine here. First thing I've been reading while I'm driving around.
You'll be driving around, fantastic. Now, before I kind of kick off on that, I need to draw your attention to one thing I didn't actually mention at the last workshop is that there's actually an unbudgeted cost for this plan. So essentially, Healthy Environments is being asked to put it together as councils. And each council is being asked to put in just short of $10,000 towards this project. I've only become aware of that fact over the last week of actually doing some investigations, so I certainly draw your attention to that. In fact, there's an unbudgeted cost to 2013-14 budget, of which we spoke with Jenny earlier today. We're looking at actually paying for that from savings that we identified as part of the portfolio.
2013-14?
Yeah, last year's budget. There's another $5,000 or just short of $5,000 for 14-15 as well. So I couldn't see anywhere, and certainly Ginny didn't have any recollection as elected members before that there was a cost involved with that, but certainly it does appear to be unbudgeted. So
just to clarify, so this is the state government's public health plan.
Correct, yeah.
And they're not putting any money towards us doing it.
That's correct, yes. Yep.
Why am I not surprised?
The main positive being, if there is a positive, is that by working as a region, it's much more cost effective than having to do it entirely on our own, which would have been a much larger cost. But it is unfortunate that it's unbudgeted for. So, right?
Can I just ask, what are we doing as a council, and what is the EHA board doing to force the government to pay for the costs that they're forcing on us?
Well, it's an individual thing. Well, no, I'm EHA. It is an individual thing that the state government can't do it for each council. It's for each council. That's why it's probably ways to go through this, because at the level at which it gets down, it's how every council responds individually. You can't do that statewide.
No, I'm saying about the costs. Why doesn't the state government put some money into this? And what have we done as a... No, that's my question is, what has this council done or doing to say to the state government, and what is the EHA board saying to the state government, put your money where your mouth is, pay for these costs that you're forcing on us? Why is it all the time the resident ratepayers of councils have got to be forced by the state Labor government continually pushing costs on the councils and saying you've got to do this without them giving us any funding? And it's about time that stop, and this council like us and EHA boards and others said, no, you want us to do that? Fine, we'll do it, but you give us the money. Show us the money. It's about time we started doing this. The council started forcing now that elections are coming on, forcing our state member of Parliament, Rachel Sanderson, get guys like Chris Parnell on our side to start saying, hey, show us the money.
The new best mate, his name just got wrong.
Sorry, Mark Parnell.
So when we report this, when we report to council, at that time maybe you can raise that issue and we can formally write to the state government about it. But at this time all we're doing is trying to comply with the Public Health Act, which has the requirement.
It's the same bucket of money though. I mean, I just don't agree with those arguments. It's the same bucket of money. Whether we give it to the state government, they take it off us, or we do it through council, they don't have money. They only have money that we give them. Same bucket of money. Whether we pay through it direct or...
We're paying twice. We're paying as ratepayers and we're paying as...
Can we come back to the actual plan itself? The cost issue I understand is topical and you may want to raise it when the report is presented. But okay, well, how do you want to deal with this tonight? Do you want to go through any exceptions that elected members may have, or you?
If you'd like, I mean, essentially, I can just go through the plan. I've got page 10 up of the plan here now. I'm sort of cutting to the chase. effectively in terms of the role of EHA councils in promoting wellbeing. That's what I sort of picked up from comments from the members at last workshop, is that, what is in the plan that actually council is required to do. So if I can just draw through the main themes that are in this 72-page document, with the first item being on page 10. So sure, let's actually make it a bit larger maybe. So the EHA Constituent Council contribute the health of the community through the various functions, including planning. Oh, thank you. Much better. Infrastructure and service provision, regulatory services, environmental management, and community development. So essentially, the notion of the public health plan is not to do anything exceptionally different from what council's doing. It's about aligning what the state government's doing with council's strategic plans. And so, as we go through the document, we'll talk about some examples that the state government, the public health plan is actually asking for, and how council's existing services fit within that. So that's page 10. So we'll sort of just move on, if that's okay, to page 14. So bear with me, I'll get to that. A key aspect of this is not just actually council's role in the public health plan, but to identify resources more broadly within the community. And certainly it actually notes that the spectrum of stakeholders that do impact upon health and well-being in the region is very broad. And the constituent councils recognise the contribution of various stakeholders in promoting community health. And there's a little bit of a slide here. And so you can see here there's environments for health. These are the three main themes of the plan: capacity for health, healthy charity research organisations, community support groups, education sector, public and private hospitals, council, state government; protection for health, again, council, state government, schools, community support groups, GPs, and environments for health, which is councils in terms of their planning role, state government, community groups, and environmental groups and businesses. So we'll go a bit more in depth into those elements in a moment. And there was, as I mentioned last workshop, there was a workshop held at which I think elected members were actually invited to attend. And this is a brief summary of the responses that the stakeholders who attended that workshop provided back. So I just read it out. The current regional access to health and wellbeing, access to many community services, transport infrastructure, a range of health services, support groups and programs, environmental amenity and access to open spaces, parks and sporting facilities. So for the Eastern region, as we know, it's sort of quite leafy and lots of parks in the area. Barriers to achieving better health and wellbeing, lifestyle, attitude, time awareness, isolation, service delivery, referrals, procedures, environmental factors, funding, resources and governance. And finally, they commented the opportunities for better health and wellbeing in the region for facilities and programs that encourage active living and healthy eating, better information and promotion, improving health education messages, service delivery, community engagement, an interesting one for council, community engagement, empowerment and volunteering, collaborative and proactive approaches, and planning environments for better health. So it includes both parks and pathways to parks and bicycle pathways and lots of things that council gets involved within. Any questions to date about any of that? Sort of keep moving along otherwise.
When you think about it, whilst I probably not totally agree with Bruce on getting the money up to start it off, but running that sort of program on an ongoing basis, it's a bucket load of money to do those things properly.
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
A bucket load.
So this is on page 16 of the document. You can see here that actually talks about that the priority areas of the state public health plan, there are 4 of them. Priority 1 being stronger and healthier communities and neighbourhoods for all generations. 2 being increasing opportunities for healthy living, healthy eating and being active. 3, preparing for climate change. 4, sustaining and improving public and environmental health protection. And critically, as I mentioned earlier, the 3 directions for public health and wellbeing in the ERA region have been classified into 3 different themes: environments for health, capacity for health, and protection for health. And so, if it's okay, I'll just actually move down to there's a summary of those activities, and so I need to move on to page 16, I think it is. Nope.
That's number 7.
Oh, here we go. This is actually a bit of a graph to expand upon those three areas that are referred to in the public health plan. So you can see the environment for health includes council's development plans, various master plans we do, environment plans. So lots of plans and planning, which is quite a large amount of work involved in that. So the word plan comes up quite often.
We already have a number of those plans. So are you saying we have to start from scratch, or that each time we do those plans, we also have to think about the public health and wellbeing impact?
Yeah, the latter's correct. Yes, we need to consider the Act with regard to those plans and its impact upon the health of the community.
So that the next time we do a master plan, that would be the case.
Part of it, yeah.
We don't have to go back over the 3 master plans we've done and open them up again and redo them.
Absolutely not. That's not the case at all. So councils, there's lots of the work that council's doing. Actually, essentially, the plan actually recognises that a lot of what council does is a key stakeholder and partner in delivering healthy communities. So it's really furthering that existing relationship.
So I just heard some gasps that this was a lot of work and a big cost involved. I mean, a quick look through that. What is it? Look, we've done a lot of those things. We've already got those things. Where would we need to embark on a new piece of work? So, you know, that would.
We don't have all those plans, I guess. So it's we don't have a arts cultural development plan.
Active transport.
But if you look at the things there, David, it mentioned that we as a council should get involved with our community, which I would have thought would be more state level. You know, healthy eating, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
When you start putting a lot of money into that, I mean, why would you have different councils doing their own thing? Why wouldn't you, at state level, do it?
I don't see healthy eating up there, though.
Go back, it's further
Yeah,
up.
healthy eating. But the councils were able to do healthy eating through state government and federal government funding. Now, I know the OPAL program's just been withdrawn. All preventative health programs have been withdrawn by the federal government, which is just stupid.
The way we refer to governments in this chamber apparently is the coalition Liberal National Federal Government have defunded OPAL, and the coalition Liberal National Government are defunding all sorts of preventative health programs.
They have defunded all preventative health.
Is that right, Bruce? Is that how you want to do it? Okay.
So state governments often relied on the federal government funding for that. So, you know, we've got Buckley's of doing anything around that
Well,
sort
the
of area.
state Labor government just committed to fund their component of OPAL because they're quite interested in the healthy eating component. So the state government agreed with local government that that's an important program. We're not part of the OPAL program, but several councils are as a pilot project. And if it works, it'll be...
Obesity prevention and
Yeah.
active
It's a state and local will be...
What is the acronym?
8 million, 8 point...
OPAL.
Obesity prevention.
something like that, yeah.
Obesity prevention, I think the AL is active living.
That's right. Yeah.
Good program, and the idea is, we're really disappointed that the federal government have pulled out because they signed a partnership agreement. The idea is to trial it, and if it works as a pilot, that you could then take it to a health insurance mob like Bupa or somebody and say, how about you be the key sponsor for this rolling out in other councils? And what we're worried about is the loss of the federal money means we might not be able to complete it properly or evaluate it in a way which means you can verify it to a third-party fund.
Mary
It was,
completed their evaluation.
yeah.
They've all done that, and we've all been thrown some money that we have to do very quickly. And that I'm talking about we have it at our school.
Okay, yeah.
I run it. So now we've been given the last lot of funding, and we have to quickly do these pointless evaluations because that's part of what the
They're not
expectation is.
pointless, they're really important.
No,
Sorry.
no, in terms of it's not allowing the program to run properly.
Okay.
I can just continue on with the...
Yep. So just just following on from that, just as I mentioned earlier, there are three core themes within this plan. The first one being environments for health, and so this, I know it's a lot of text in here, but the first one being environments for health. And I'll just expand it so you can see it more clearly. So
Page is that?
that is on page 28. Actually, 28 to 31 is the schedule for this. And so essentially, there's each core area actually that has some more detail in the plan. So it's pretty easy to take in really. So definitely draw your attention to that. So the built environment, obviously. So addressing. Oh, yep. Sorry, I'll just make it a little bit smaller. That's all right. Too small at all?
No, go back. Oh, it's okay, the other one.
It's okay.
Go on. We'll read it back.
Okay, so again, within the framework of environments for health, you can see from this that many of these notions are not unusual to council. Addressing the population housing growth 30-year plan, maintaining character, amenity and streetscape. So it just really sort of highlights the existing role that is played by councils in maintaining the health and well-being of their communities. I mean, nothing really sort of jumps out to me as a particular surprise. As mentioned earlier, there may be some plans and frameworks we don't have we might need to develop. Yep.
I don't want to get involved with everyone's political discussion point here, but I'd like to, this plan, and I have been looking at it, that's why I run it off. I was trying to jump in earlier with a real concern I have because of medical knowledge in my family, particularly through the federal government. We're knocking off a big drawback. The reason I wanted to bring it in is a plan like this is with the state budget that's just happened with some areas, like David said, they're trying to help, continue on, others are being stopped. The federal one's been, so it's a sort of health plan like this, taking sort of those two things in consideration of some of the things we do. You know, like we got healthy people, they're changing their own bandages, leaving them on the footpath. You know, I'm a bit worried because things you did say earlier, and David raised quite soon, that things like bypass, footpaths, you know, we're in that anyway. We don't have to change a lot of plans. But a lot of the other bits that I've been reading in it, do the two various sort of budgets, if they both go through and all that, do the two various budgets change any of this sort of idea?
It's not my reading, Ellen. No, it really is. Just as I said earlier, it's a lot of what the plan talks about is really articulating what councils do actually currently do to develop healthy communities. And I mean, the state government does talk about wanting to have a more collaborative approach with councils, to increase that collaboration. And to that end, it's trying to align their plans with local government, and also with charitable organisations and other stakeholders as well. Look, I mean, again, nothing actually particularly has jumped out to me as being that I would want to draw your attention to particularly. I think it's interesting reading. Obviously, we're just sort of skimming over it now in terms of what other councils do and provide some comparison to what this council does. But I mean, certainly for our size, I mean, we're, you know, meeting many of the requirements of it and currently there.
You can always do more, can't you? If
Absolutely, yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I mean, I know Deb Richardson's been sitting on the steering group for this for some time, and I can sort of see that she's sort of taken care to be very realistic in terms of what Prospect's doing and making sure that nothing sort of particularly stands out. But you know, I guess it just needs more detailed reading to be able to make those comments. So if I just sort of move along, just to don't have a lot of time. So again, it's again, a lot of these things you would be sort of not unfamiliar with. The last one there is, and that's under the heading of Environments for Health, is promoting and maintaining diversity, promoting sustainable resource use, tree management and protection. I mean, lots of the eastern councils have access to sort of, you know, natural corridors, such as along the riverbank and whatnot. It doesn't actually apply so much to council, which is a unique difference for them, for us rather. There's no more questions about environments for health. The next category there is capacity for health. That's on page 32, Alan. Again, this is just another schedule of.
Well, there to me is one, and that's 7.2 in current state of play. No, that's right, current state of play, and I'm assuming I'll go to the next thing. No, it's still that. So a lot of that current state of play then won't be. If people are paying extra to go to the doctors, they won't go to the doctors. And I don't honestly get into the whole thing. I'm just saying the hack programs we got of the various things that are cut back, and the one that Jane and her nurse friends are screaming about, the nurses that are going out and doing bandages and stuff, all that funding's gone all together, you know. So when we look at this personal health sort of access written here, to me it's not really a current position.
That's a good point, yeah.
It's no, we're living linger. And I see we're now a country.
Sorry, Minister, I didn't quite hear the rumble that came.
We're living linger.
It moved on. It moved on. Moved on to the very important point you were making, former deputy mayor, and was making his own.
Just rolled off the truck there for a minute.
So we're a country now.
It's a typo.
All right, bear with me. I just watch your eyes and.
I really read that. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I was just going to put ahead. It's a long document. I need to make sure we're in the right.
Wasn't it called proofreading?
So I just want to be sure, we need to pick up on Alan's comments there. Do we need to adjust anything else?
Well, that because I haven't read it like that, and I only read bits and pieces that I was interested in, to be honest, and looked at it. But from what we got told when the nice ladies come from the library there, the hack stuff that's being changed, I know the doctor stuff, if it gets through, this is all, if these things get through, the $7 stuff that's there. And through my own Jane and that, they're talking about, and these nurse things have all been cut, bang, the whole lot. So there'll be no one, and I didn't know we actually used to do it, to be honest. But people come around to change bandages and give medicines and instead of doctors. Yeah, give their meds actually, and that sort of stuff. So when we're writing something like this, I would imagine, if I'm looking there and they say, oh yeah, now we don't have to do too much to giving people medicine to fit into this because we do that anyway. Well, now we're not going to do that. So I haven't read it into anywhere because I've only been page.
So perhaps I can get those issues just sort of considered a bit further, maybe.
Well, I can then put that question and then just leave it and some state. Is the view of this, would that be different taking into account the two budgets that are
Well, that's a good point, because if we're thinking that we need to take this into consideration and there's been a cut at the federal level, and we want to provide that capacity to have good health at the local level, are we saying that there's cost shifting down to us? Are we going to pick up the drop in the hack, or you know?
Well, that's what we were told. Yeah, it would take on those responsibilities. That's why we've lost some of our hack funding, because that funding is going to, what's that mob called? Some other mob that they're going to be taking on certain roles that hack.
So we won't need to do them?
We won't need to do it. No, there's another mob going to do it.
Centralising it, aren't they?
Yeah.
Another mob. They're just centralising the...
So there's some other mob taking over. The amount of funding that we had to accomplish that has been taken away. Whether they got the figures right, I wouldn't have a clue. But some other mob is centrally now taking on that role.
If you look through the latest DSS, the Commonwealth lot of grants that deal with a lot of all this, there is hardly any where local governments are applicable. It all goes to other organisations. So we are being cut out of a lot.
Yes, look, I'm not arguing that, but I'm just arguing the point that there is another centralised function that's doing it.
Sorry, can I just add to that, because a couple of weeks ago I went to the ERA CEOs meeting for David, CEOs and mayors, and we had a presentation on hack, and so I think there's been a bit of a sort of progress is the right word, but certainly it's moved forward a little bit from that. So in terms of the, because I think you're talking about the referral function under hack, which is coming out of local government and being tendered for.
Yes, yeah.
And we may still have a role in that.
Indeed we might, yeah.
So it may not all be lost. So I just want to make that point. It might not all
A work in progress.
Well, that's where my question goes.
Yes, I think that's really important for this, is to build some capacity in here for what might come out of that process.
And I think we've got to be really careful not to try and be everything to everybody. If we're not funded for it, and we don't think we've got capacity to put the rates up to do it, we should find out who is funded for it and have a really good referral process to whoever that mob or mobs are.
But the DHA are looking at putting in an application, answering the tender, to do that for ERA.
That may well be our answer, but there might be other bits of it that
cost-wise it's got to really work for us, otherwise.
Brendan, we're fast running out of time.
Yeah,
so.
that's okay. I'll just quickly move on. So the second of the three themes is capacity for health, as I mentioned earlier. And so again, this is on page 42, and it sort of gives more detail of what they actually mean by capacity for health. And so essentially, it's the capacity of the community for the social interaction, that sort of sense of community and connectedness. So really, it is actually a continuation of Alan's comments. And certainly with the HACK program, the aspect of the program that is proposed to be lost is the assessment part. It is actually the relationship part. Anyway, so unless there's any comments, I'll just keep moving through that. So the community keeps your well-being, promoting social interaction, reducing social isolation, promoting positive well-being, perceptions of safety, strong sense of belonging. So it's very much those themes of community that I think this council is actually quite strong at, really. So it goes on, and so some of the sort of more traditional health notions. So the capacity for healthy lifestyles, chronic disease risk in the community, physical inactivity. So there's things like actually having safe parks and safe walking, pavements, and exercise equipment in parks, and these are what councils can do to promote active, healthy lifestyles. So,
sorry, I don't want to labour it, but just a quick question. The state government's doing a lot of work around this, including safe neighbourhoods. So how did the two come together? Because there's a whole band of work happening in state government, looking, particularly, I mean, safe neighbourhoods is one of their, I think, 9 or 7 key themes.
Yes, 7.
So it just would seem silly to for them to do something and they could be different. Or
absolutely, yeah. The plan mark does actually pick that up, and you can see here, just sort of sliding across to the right here, actually talks about relevant state government plans and policies and our partners.
I can tell you none of those agencies are involved in that today.
Oh, really? Okay.
What?
None of those agencies are involved in that conversation.
No, because some of them have gone. Well, the ACT doesn't exist anymore.
Is it healthy neighbourhoods? Is that what it's called?
I think safe neighbourhoods. Yeah, the Attorney General's actually, last I was involved with it, which was
the other, I think you're right again.
We just make sure they're connected somehow.
Yeah. And if other people are doing this work, let's not reinvent a wheel, because there's a lot of stuff we could spend the rest of our lives doing here. We haven't even got our playground strategy sorted yet. which I think is just a really simple thing that we should do. It's not as high a level, but has an impact, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
But the Hart Foundation have also done some really good work on footpaths and local parks and linkages in residential areas. And it's a really lovely guide about how far parks should be from houses and whatever. And that's a body of work we should grab and say, if that's our, almost, if we agree with that, that's our template.
It's an excellent document.
I can move a park though.
The other overlay to all of this that we're sort of, I guess, starting to get towards is when you look at a lot of those social health atlas and the ABS stats there, they'd say, right, well, in Prospect, about the main thing that leapt out there was we've got the young community with families, whereas Campbelltown's got, heavily into more aged and cold, and we've got a whole lot of renters. So, there's the two that just stick in my mind at the moment. So that's, I think, getting more to then the crunch of, well, what should we be putting as priority?
Yeah.
And it seems that the state government actually is putting in money indirectly, so it may not be such a huge impact for us.
Okay.
Just onto the third and final of those three themes that are identified in the plan, and Alan, this is actually on page 51, and essentially it's talking about the protection for health, and you see there it's actually it's where a lot of the EHA business comes into play here. Resources respond to significant numbers of public health complaints and referrals, adopting a proactive approach to environmental health. Immunisation is identified there, and food safety, healthcare community services, so the support of residential facilities is picked up there, and integration of public health consideration with regard to emergency management. So again, it is a fairly lengthy document. It's 72 pages long, but essentially there are those three themes of environment for health, capacity for health, and protection for health, much of which Council already does. It won't be particularly unfamiliar to you, but I certainly invite you to read that, and any questions and comments, I'm more than happy to discuss that with you. So the plan from where to from here is that essentially the steering committee set up for this project, as I mentioned in the last workshop, was actually asked that it's deferred until after the election, so that essentially the new council will get to have a look at it, looking at going to a workshop in December and then to a council meeting. Essentially, the council meeting will actually propose that a draft goes out to broader community consultation according to our consultation policy. So that's the next steps.
Else. I mean, the average community there is going to struggle to respond to a document like this. So if you want our support for a community consultation program, you might want to tell us what that looks like. Not, here's 72 pages, tell us what you think, because I don't think you'll get any responses. But if you said, let's go to the local businesses and talk to them about the aspects that affect them, or go to the schools and talk just about that. I don't know how you're going to structure it. Yes, and that we'll tick the consultation box, but effectively haven't heard anything.
Absolutely, okay.
Big document. Yeah.
But might be also in terms of lots of things we're already doing, what's going to be that's in there that we're not doing that maybe we should be doing.
Right.
And is that what do you think about that?
Okay, we'll pick those comments up. Thanks for that, Brendan. I think that's pretty much got us covered for now. So just to recap, workshop in December, and then a further report to Council regarding the consultation process, and come up with a bit of a plan in December with the new Council. So we'll recap with the new Council before we report to Council, and then within the report to Council we'll detail how we'll consult on the plan.
Me, could be you.
Could be anyone.
I think it really needs to hit home for councillors where it will have most impact cost-wise. I mean, that's the crucial thing.
The report.
Yeah, utterly crucial.
If any. If it's just every time we touch a policy we have to run it through this filter, the cost might be minimal. If we have to actually revisit some policies and spend time on it with specialists, well, that's a big cost, let alone the implementation cost.
We mentioned a number of areas there that normally council just doesn't, well, you might through HAP, but if it becomes city-wide, you might be talking fairly big programs.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for those comments. We'll move on, because we're running out of time, to item number 3, which is the request for support, Operation Flinders. You would have all received a copy of the letter from Jonathan. The deputy.
My paperwork, I don't think I saw that.
Deputation. I can give you that. So really, it's basically
just what they said when they came and addressed us.
a more formal request in writing of what was discussed at the council meeting, and I guess the intention is to get some feedback from you as elected members as to whether you want to refer it to council for formal consideration or otherwise.
We already put this to a...
Well, I'd moved the motion on it. It was just not one person here thought it was worthy enough. We were quite happy to give money away to an African market that's not successful. But you guys didn't even second the motion.
Yeah, that's what happened. Yeah, we said no.
We're looking at priorities.
Yeah, so just to clarify, on the night, obviously Bruce put forward a motion that was unprepared, I guess it's fair to say. And so the opportunity tonight is to discuss the merits of it, and if you think it has merit, we can provide a report to council and you can consider it formally. That's the intention of tonight. If there's no support, then we won't worry about it.
Look, there's no querying of the worthiness of it. They've proved themselves, over many, many years. But my problem with I still didn't sort of seem to get a clear answer about how many youth would be from our area. I'd be willing to support if I knew that it was like 2 youth and it costs, how much is the cost there for each one? $500 or whatever it was.
$10,000 for 8 kids, something like that.
So I still haven't got it clear in my mind, because I don't think we can just put up, given our budget what it is, we can't just put up a blanket $5,000 and hope that we're going to get how many children for that.
As I understand, there was no clarity over specifically where those kids had come from. They could be quite varied, apart from being generally in this region. That was as I recall from the
Well, the only explanation I got, we got was it would stop kids from coming in and graffitiing in Prospect.
I thought it was pretty low, really.
What I might do is just to get a feel from around the table, if I could.
Question?
Sure. Bruce did have a question first, though.
I didn't have a question. I just wanted to make a comment.
We'll go around the table and get those. So, question first.
Yeah. The question was, and I was listening to what people were saying. The children or the young people, it says 30% of women, 15% average. Put that to one. Who are they? Are they unemployed street kids or what? Well, I actually have a view of this.
At risk of something, whatever.
They're at risk children, that's right. Kids, vulnerable children at risk. Can I start then instead of starting with Bruce or Monica?
Yeah, certainly can, yeah.
In one respect, and that's unfortunately I wasn't at any meetings that discussed it, and looking at it, I run a program years ago, basically things for other people, and it was actually when we knocked down the news building. That's why I was looking to the date of that. When we demolished the news building on North Terrace, one of the biggest and saddest things that I noticed was the street kids that lived in the news building on North Terrace, and I'm talking about hundreds of kids, over the nights and lived there. I'm talking about tons of syringes there and condoms, and they were there for other reasons. And we set up a program, this is BLF, from jobs, raising money, and we done a thing with the Hindley Street youth, and every September, I'm making up a little bit because I can't think of exact figures, but every September we used to send about a dozen or 15 kids, just street kids, and we used to send them up to the Flinders and we had a couple of young police cadets used to go with them. And
I can't remember that. It was very successful.
Youth sort of group people. We used to pay for them, and pay the whole lot, and they'd send them up. And that's why I'm sort of going to this thing here, that if this is a similar thing, I sort of see it important because, and I'm not going to pick up what anyone said, but one of the most important things that we had, and Bill Sparr was actually one of our sponsors when he done the Stanford on North Terrace, and it was very hard. We tried to do the money for that particular week, and the street kids had already broken into Coke machines and everything and stole everything that we were going to be giving them. So it made it hard to get in the collection. But it really helped a lot of young kids. They went up there, they seen a bit of life that they never saw and came back. Some of them actually become builder slavers. I got it up at the fixes and live. And when I was listening to the stuff before I come tonight, if it was that type of program, and most probably any other sort, but that type of program, I'd like to say, that's over a 3-year thing, that we may put $2,000 in each year for that type of program. Because, and one of the people said here tonight, and a couple of you said, is it people from our area and this and that. So the street kids from the city, none of them, absolutely none of them, are born in High Street. None of them are born in the city. They come from Salisbury, Elizabeth, Prospect, Burnside, Christie's. They come from there. That's where they end up. And when I say about those, I call them filthy condoms and the thing, it used to be called a $20 empire. Because they used to pay $20 for a stick to shoot in their arm, and they used to give oral sex to many business people for that $20. So that High Street worked on 20. And we used to send 10, 15 kids every September up to the thing. So if this is a similar sort of program, I'd be happy to put something towards it. I went through the 5 and that, but I just couldn't, and just quickly on that part through it, I couldn't see that in there. But if it's that type of program, I think we can, and we shouldn't look whether the young people come or are going to do damage in our area, because they come from a area.
To cut through all that, you would support a report to council to consider it formally?
Yeah.
We might go around the table now. Monica, do you want to read?
I don't disagree with you, Alan. I think it's a fantastic program, but it's not our priority. We have cut the budget so harshly. There are programs, there are many, many things that we could be doing in the city with our ratepayers' money. I can't justify donations to Operation Flinders. We could look at a way that we as councillors could fundraise it. The community lottery would be a fantastic thing if one of us took that on. If we looked at other ways of raising money, perhaps, I don't know, something through Club 5082. But this is a 3-year commitment, $5,000 a year, and I really can't see. I don't think that's what we're looking for.
No, doesn't matter.
I disagree.
I work in education.
Yeah.
I know that it benefits kids, but my councillor's hat on, can't justify it. Unless we looked at ways of raising the money outside of budget operations.
Okay. We'll keep moving on the table. Bruce?
Look, I'm ashamed to say what I've heard from Monica Lee, just ashamed to hear what she said.
Just sad for you, Bruce. You'll get over it.
This is a fantastic program. We had Councillor Mark Root wanting us to pay for nappies to mothers who drove Range Rovers and Mercedes-Benzes, and that was quite okay. Oh, no, it drove.
It's been really offensive.
Well, I take it back, yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Just, I think
No, you're being rude, not
Just stick to the topic.
nappies. Whereas something like this, and that's what I'm trying to make, Mark. Something like this was, I've been to a meeting where this group, that Christian Fellowship meeting, where this group spoke. We raised a number of funds. The success rate of this is quite successful, and what they did is a fantastic program. I thank the councillor on the left here for supporting it.
I know the Operation Flinders program. I read a lot about it. It worked immensely great for the kids that actually went up there, and the police officers that were involved in it. I think there was a program on TV about it. It was very, very successful, and I think this council should fund it. Maybe we don't have the Mayor's Dinner. We fund it out of that. The Mayor's Dinner's come out with all this. That's probably going to cost $10,000. Maybe we don't have that. We have pie and chips around the pie cart, and we fund the money out of that. We save out of the Mayor's Dinner that's come out, I think it's in August. We don't have that. We put the money into this.
So you'd support a report to council? I forgot to ask Monica, are you okay for a report to council? Not interested? Christina?
Well, I'm going to give my own personal donation because I couldn't get to the quiz night. So I'm going to do that. And I just think it's just a matter of timing. I don't know where the council are going to recommend that we actually get some money from to do it. So if it had come to us when we were considering the budget, it would have been so much easier to say, yeah, well, we can do that. But just for this particular timing, so I'd be much prepared to, as Monica suggested, I think for this stage, for this particular financial year, to see, how else we could do it. I'd be quite happy to sort of help with there's the good old quiz night or that, get the community involved. I remember at the Twilight concerts when there was the when I was mayor, and so we had the collections, and I think when Barry Harless was deputy mayor, we had a similar thing for another particular disaster.
That was in Italy.
Yes, that one. The other one was the tidal wave, the tsunami, when I was mayor, and we made a collection there at the Twilight concerts. So I think if we just put our collective minds together for this financial year, I think that we might be able to come up and actually involve more of the community instead of just giving money.
So, are you keen for a report to go to council? Or?
Yeah, I don't mind if it comes to council. Taking on board, all the things that we've been discussing.
Just before we go on any further, I guess one of the key issues of concern is that this is an approach by one particular organisation. There might be others out there that we don't know.
Exactly.
Scott?
I certainly support a report, but right here, right now, I'm not going to constrain this council to $5,000 a year for 3 years. But I did just want to pick up on something that Monica did say, that Rachel and Jonathan both said they're happy for any amount, and I know that other councils don't give this amount. So I think $5,000 for 3 years is a lot of money for this council, and I wouldn't support that amount. And like Alan said, a lesser amount, and it might be that we support, maybe it may seem a bit stingy, but one kid every 3 years, or something like that. But I think yeah. So I think there's some other things that we need to think of, and I think just committing $5,000 a year, sort of information about how many kids are here, but what Alan did say, and we would never know, and I think it would be very hard for us to know that how many kids, because there might be parents that might not speak up about it, and and they might request that that stays confidential, because we are in a small council, and a lot of people in this council know a lot of other parents. That I would support a report, but I mean, right here, right now, I would support $5,000 a year for 3 years.
Okay, thanks for that. Report to council, but we've already talked to you, Alan. So, Mark?
1992, just before this bulldozed the news building, I used to go in there when I worked for South Asian Youth Worker, and used to take soup in there.
Hope not with the shrines.
No. Alan's actually spot on in terms of that building. I remember it really clearly, amongst some others. And as a result, I said to a lot of my clients, I'm very, very supportive of the program. We've been here debating lots of issues in the budget, and what I'm trying to reconcile in my mind is what is our responsibility And what precedent does it set for every other organisation that's trying to run on a shoestring to come to us and ask for money? I think it's fine with that. I really wish Rachel had, she would understand those cycles. If she comes to us 2 months earlier, could have been at this point that it came to us, it could have come earlier. Consider it in a different context. In terms of the book of accounts, I think we probably owe it that it comes to council for a decision, and that's on public record. I would really welcome the opportunity to look at funding individuals as opposed to funding the program. And that's something that we could do into merit allowance and civic allowance or through a budget process. But where they might say, we would not want to know who, but they might say we've got a young person whose family lives in Prospect, and we might say the council yes will support that one person for the program. And that could be, I don't think it's our role to fundraise for this organisation, because then we fundraise for Rotary and Lions and for everyone else. And we do support some of those because they're local-based organisations. So I'm not sure it's our role to do that, but it could be that we could sponsor a young person on it when it's relevant to us. But I won't support a budget variation of $5,000. We've just heard, not 10 minutes ago, another impossible around $10,000 for health. Suddenly, we're right back to what we all said we weren't going to do, which is just bring things within the Energy Council for budget variations, and I'm concerned about that. I think it's a timing issue. Like I say, the new council can debate next year as a fuller donation, but at this point I'd be supporting something much more modest. But I think in respect to Operation Kindred and to our local member, it should go to a council report.
Okay. David?
Look, I think we're really embarrassed by this. I really regret that this very worthy charity has been brought into this scenario by a local member, because it puts us in a really embarrassing position if we choose to say no or choose a different amount. And I think that's pretty unfair compared to all the other expenses we've got, all the other charities we choose to support. Just think, how do we say, look, so for me, the answer is really, really simple. We have a community grants process. This is an application for a community grant. It goes through the community grant process. The application is closed on the 25th of July. Fill out an application form. It goes through the panel of people who assess its worthiness, and it pops out the other end, and we generally, as a council, endorse whatever the recommendation is that's put before us. And if that body of people who specialise in assessing it thinks that it deserves some money, I'll be there to say, right, let's do that as the grants for this year, off it goes. So I'm not against giving it money. I'm just really embarrassed about how it's come to us. And I agree. What about if the Multiple Sclerosis Society came to us at our next council meeting? They've just stacked a whole heap of people because they're running out of money. There'd be a ton of people with MS in our city. And we could identify them really easily through the HACK program or through other things. Okay, so what about if we've got the guide dogs for blind people come to us to say we need some help in getting pups ready or whatever it might be? I just think we've got to be really careful about how we approach these types of requests and treat them with the same consistent process as much as possible to avoid embarrassment. Because if we say yes to this but no to the next one because we've used all our money up on Operation Flinders, how do we justify saying no and no to the next one? So there's a process invented by councils of the past, indebted to them, put it through the process. Okay. Now, in terms of finding a solution for, in case it misses out, I think Chris hits on a good point. We have had collections before at community events, and I have seen them work at major events. And I wonder whether we could ask for that at the terrific Prospect gates, right, because it's an enclosed event, people to come through the gate, whether we would consider allowing a charity to have a bucket there, a gold coin donation as they come through the gates. A lot of people come to that event. Unley have done it before with the Cancer Council, at least I've seen them there. It's got to be done sensitively so people don't feel like it's a ticket to get in, but it can be done. But even then, I would still say, what's the process for who we choose to be at our gates? Because is it this mob or are there other mobs that we should let have a go at that? So I'm not in favour of a report specifically about this item. I am in favour of it going through the process and coming through in a report about all the community grants. The only way I'd be happy with the report is if it's about a collection or us endorsing a single entity to have a collection of our gates to terrific Prospect. So we had some process around who we let do that. Maybe you only let them do it once and someone else if we ever do it again. And the third way of trying to find a solution for it is if we're not happy with the community grants process and it doesn't, the collection at the gate, we don't like that process either, then put up a budget bid for the 15-16 budget. And then let's have a discussion amongst all the projects about how it fits in with the, the this or the that, whether it survives the process. Okay, so I'm not saying no, other than not a report just on this one. I'm just trying to find a solution that fits the way we do business.
Very cool. Finish off with Ashley.
Process for me. It's outside the budget period. Each of us could sit here and write dozens of charities with one. What then do we do? I personally would put countless charities ahead of this one. Countless. That work on a much greater scale that would really impact on people in Prospect. Cancer, heart disease, name it, lots, and they're always needing money. And look, I just totally agree with David, to come along and just front the council outside of a budget period in particular. What do we do? What do we do if the next person now thinks, oh, gee, they got the 5,000, we'll line up. I've tried to be CEO, I've tried hard not to even have it on the basis that you just can't run a business that way. You allow anybody to come along and have their chat about wanting 5 or 10 or whatever $1,000. We have a process. I think in terms of one consideration, David mentions on that we support charities, but that's only, I think, in terms of that community grant. Yes. If it's outside of that, I think the first thing we should be doing is discussing whether we ever go down for anybody. We don't have a policy on it at all. And I think on that basis alone, I would say no, it is not within our process. And once you open it up to one, how many do you open it up for? So I think before we go down that road, we really should have a decision. Do we have a right with ratepayers' money to donate to charities? Then we do, how much? And then to who? But just because somebody comes along and asks for $5,000 with very little relevance to Prospect, and whilst that's not the key factor, you could line up charities from one end of Prospect to the other that would fit the same bill, that could come along and would all feel, yeah, you do a good job. But you can't run a business that way. And you certainly can't do it outside of the budget process. And I find it quite extraordinary. I mean, Bruce voted against the budget. And yet somebody comes along outside the budget process and he wants to chuck $5,000 in.
I wouldn't say 5,000, excuse me.
Oh, sorry.
I'm quite happy. Whatever people want to say, I'll go along with. There's $1,000 on.
How much should I have a go for then?
$1,000. I don't know.
$1,000, all right.
You said $1,000 or $2,000.
But either way, it's now outside the budget process. We've just been through. We've got $70,000 deficit. We got no room to move. Even if we had a surplus, I'd still say no because of the process. Because you then have to open it up. Why wouldn't you open it up to every other charity on the planet?
Just to add to that.
No, for me, no. I don't think there should be a report. And I agree with David. It really puts you back to the wall of suddenly making it great big. How nice in the public. City of Prospect councillors say no to. Yeah. It's just a terrible. Kim, I just did it out loud. It is not in our process, and I don't think we should go there.
What is in our process at the moment is we have our community grants program and the community support fund. There's an application process. The only limitation with that is that this organisation is seeking a commitment for 3 years, as I recall, whereas the community grant is an annual basis. So that's the only limitation, I think. But it is quite feasible for us to funnel that proposal through that grant process, which is equitable with other organisations and can be considered at that time. If that's the wish of the council, that could be a logical. But it could meet.
Well, hang on. So that's a very good question. But if it doesn't meet the criteria, then you'd have to say, well,
why are we doing that?
The Prospect chapter that's been set up. So could I just add, I've also referred to Rachel to refer on to Operation Flinders, some other grants that are available as well. I don't think we can actually commit our budget to. either.
No.
So I think that's another point as well. That,
Oh, that's a good.
and also, in the olden days, I remember when we used to have mayoresses and mayors. And so it used to be the mayoress that would do the charity bit, and so they'd do some function, you know, things like that. And the original intention of the Prospect Fair used to be the charity fair. And so, you know, there could have been some avenue sort of there. Anyway.
Got them, Monica?
I think David raised some good points. Where how many? You care to nominate? I think the one that he did sort of touch on, and it comes back to with the carols in the park, where we've discussed about, you know, the Lions get it all the time, and you know, I'm a Animal Lions member. But we've discussed that, you know, perhaps we should be sharing it around to Kiwanis, to the Rotary. So this could tie in with what you were saying about, you know, if we continue with the terrific prospect that, you know, we change it every year, and this could be one of them that get on the list. But I should also note that, and I'm not clear with what's been sent, but are they asking it for this year, which I don't believe that they are, because they've raised all the funds for this financial year. So I'm not too sure that it's a forward request. But I think what David's sort of saying, I mean, maybe whether we can tie that, I mean, I don't know how you tie it all into a report, but I mean, I'd much rather see a report to that effect than a report into Operation Flinders.
Around terrific prospect or...
Yeah, like with charities.
I was actually, that's the point I was going to make, that I would be concerned about just saying, well, Operation Commiserations, you can have the front gate at Terrific Prospect. I think you still need a process to go through. And that the report not be about Operation Flinders, but it be about devising a policy around what we do with this sort of thing. There was one other thing.
I've just yes, I was just thinking that we could canvass perhaps also having something on, a little thing on our website that just changes, you know, like you could just make, we'd have to have some process around it, but you could just feature, you know, like a little charity of the week or something or other, I don't know. And in Prospect Council magazine, you might just be able to have a little area there. So I don't know how you manage that process.
That's the issue, isn't it? I mean, there's so many charities, and
pick them out of a hat.
Yeah,
you know,
and
you get that.
To say, well, Operation Flinders, there may be a kid who lives in Prospect, but there are many people that access many services and charity organisations across. You know, it'd just be infinite.
Well, we're having, you know, the Cancer Foundation ring me to go and door knock. Now it's the Heart Foundation, go and door knock on my street and collect, you know, so...
we need to move on, David.
Operation Flinders might that all
In terms of the pathway forward, can I propose something? Because I'm really worried that you come back with a report on one charity and we say no, or we give an answer which looks pretty mean, and kind of we look like this compromises our ability to better off saying there's a process. So step one is Operation Flinders looks fantastic. There's no one who's arguing about the program. Please go through the community grants process, closes on the 25th of July. If you need our help, bring staff quickly.
I understand it's got 23,000 available within that grant.
That's right, yep. And yes, we can't commit to 3 years, but we've given some organisations money every year for years, so it's not out of the question to do that year after year. The second thing is that the report that comes to Council talks about fundraising at community events, and there are two that have worked. One is the collections at the concerts, and the other that I've seen work elsewhere is the gate collection at the street party. And that you write a report that comes to us about how we could set up a process that Operation Flinders could apply to be considered under. And how would we advertise that to others, I don't know, but you're clever people, you work it out. And that you advise Operation Flinders that if they want something else, that they need to put a budget bid up for next budget, which we start thinking about in March next year, Jenny?
March, yeah.
People more comfortable with that as a pathway through it?
I think I think you'd need to let every charity know that it's up for grabs.
That's right.
But just looking at the criteria, I don't think they fit.
They're in
It
prospect.
says should, and so there is some discretion.
I think that raises a really good point though, Monica. If we've got criteria around what charities or organisations we support and they don't fit it, well, either we've got to be challenged about changing their policy, or we reinforce and say, no, our policy is actually right. That's not the appropriate place to fund them. We'll give them a fundraising opportunity somewhere. And we control that gate, that to review. That can be 10 grand. Yeah.
I remember we have done some things like we planted flowers for some charity out in the garden beds or something or other, a couple of years. And I think I made a rule that was most probably my own rule, it's mayor's discretion, that I actually didn't give anything out of the mayoral grant because there were so many calls on, you know, how do you choose one over the other?
Well, I generally only do stuff in the area. And it's really small. It's $100, $200.
Can I just say publicly, just a comment that was made, this has got nothing to do with Liberal Party or Rachel Sanderson. It's got nothing to do with that. It's got everything to do with being fair and equitable and moving within our capacity as a council. Just wanted to say that out loud.
Excellent. So just a way forward, I think it does make sense that we refer the proposal through the grants program. There is potential for it to be considered. And the report that we do present to Council is a policy-related report that talks about funding opportunities through our community events, as you suggested. So I think that's a reasonable way. So we do a report, but we actually respond to the Operation Flinders request by saying we'll fund it through the grant process. And if the grant process needs to be reviewed in the future, we can do that. As a council, we can adjust the guidelines.
I promise it's my final thing. But I thought, because I mean, if they've got a prospect chapter, they would be eligible for a prospect fair as well.
Well, yeah, quite right.
So that's something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a range of options, isn't there?
It raised more money for them in this conversation than their letter after.
Okay, so just to conclude, I will report to Council, but it will be more on future opportunities and policy changing, and I'll respond immediately to them, referring them to the Community Grants Program, and that has available funds, and it can be considered as part of that. Yeah? Everyone good with that? I think that makes sense. We'll finish off with the final item for tonight, which is the election update. I guess Kerry or Ginny are going to help us with it.
Just finishing up. So can I have a light? Let there be light. Newton. Hey, this is just a brief update for the November election to see where we're at. It's early days yet, but I think as previously reported, we have sent out over 5,000 letters to our ratepayers, encouraging them to ensure they're on our voters' roll, making sure all the renting people who would be on the House of Assembly roll anyway, making sure their address is correct, so that's why we've sent so many letters out this year. Unfortunately, the response is a little like the last election. We've got about 60 back so far.
Close?
8th of August. So we're running a bit of an advertising campaign in the Messenger on the website. The LGA, I believe, will be doing a little bit of advertising, but I think they're sort of a bit behind on their process for getting all the election stuff together. So they're focusing their efforts on encouraging people to nominate and then encouraging people to vote.
So is this the business people?
There's business people, there's landowners that don't live in Prospect, there's renters, there's body corporates.
Yeah. Not just the people that live in houses.
No.
Are they already on the roll?
Yeah. No,
Yes,
that's
we've got the House and Assembly roll. These are the people that we need to have on the council that get tipped off every. They clear the council roll on the 1st of January before an election. There is a bill in Parliament at the moment on its second reading. That's the right terminology in Parliament. On its second reading to get rid of that change to legislation and have everyone back on the voters' roll. But of course that's further down the track.
Absolute crop, that was.
Still costing
What party
money.
did that? The Labour Party, that's right.
Okay, our returning officer for the election is Kay
You
Mousley.
start as well. Both ends of the table of it.
Oh, okay, sorry, another key date. The caretaker period, as we spoke about last week, will be from 16th September to the conclusion of the election, unless you resolve otherwise at the August council meeting. There was general agreement, I think, at the last workshop that was just run with the 16th of September. Okay, returning officer, as usual, is from the electoral. And she has appointed 2 deputy returning officers, being Cheryl Moreland, who is from EXA, Electoral Commission, and Carla Bianco, which is called local now. I don't think that particularly means local in Prospect. It just means somebody they bring in that doesn't work for the Electoral Commission, and they pay them, and she is the local, and they have different responsibilities. So, and also, I've been appointed the council liaison officer. So,
the one down the bottom.
Congratulations.
oh, gee, thanks. So I'll be the first point of contact for the deputy returning officers. And we also have a council electoral liaison team made up of Sadie Lovering, there for a governance position, Kerry Price, who's team leader customer service, and most of her team will get the first queries, Chris Arthur for rates to getting the voters roll up to date, Eden Jones from Tom, and Anna Melia, who's just a good team member, not there for any particular reason other than a good help.
The troops.
Yep, rally the troops.
Oranges.
So the Cheryl, being the Deputy Returning Officer for EXA, will be managing the election, appointing counting staff, authorising the nominations as they come through. Quite a high level of responsibility. Carla, as the local Deputy Returning Officer, will be here almost as a liaison between myself and Cheryl. It's quite a hierarchical thing. She'll be here on hand when the nominations close, and she will also organise the ballot for where people go on the ballot list.
Oh, so you did.
Okay, thank you, Owen.
You have to remind us about that.
Bruce won out last time, first out of the hat. Ever? You were first out of the hat.
So long ago.
Was I?
Yeah.
Not having a roll in it this year. So,
Do that again.
And my role will be to liaise with Carla and EXA where required.
Just out of the hat.
I have to organise a candidate briefing. Ginny will probably run it, but I'll have to organise it. And we're having ours on Monday the 1st of September. And we'll be giving out nomination kits with the election liaison team. They'll be giving out nomination kits, answering queries, receiving nomination forms but not processing them. All we do is hand them over to EXA to authorise them. We'll make sure that we've got them on display, so the lower level stuff is what we're doing out there. So as far as the advertising goes, there'll be 3 phases. There's the enrol to vote phase, which is currently going on and finished on the 8th of August. And then we'll be looking at attracting nominations, and then we'll be encouraging people to vote. So the 3 phases of the advertising. The budget's been approved, so 25% of our advertising budget has been spent in the 13-14 year, which was getting all the letters out to get people on the roll. 25% of it will be for advertising in the Messenger. 25% of it will be for the candidate magazine. Those of you remember the magazine we had, and every candidate was able to put in a profile. It was a special edition of the magazine. I think for cost sake this time what we're going to do is have it as an insert in the magazine that goes out in October.
We can choose not to do that if we want to save money, can't we? What's the cost of that?
Budgeted $4,000. It may come down if it's an insert, but
Not if you get 58 candidates.
yeah.
So yeah, because you've got to distribute it somehow, don't you?
Yeah. So that's why I want to put it as an insert, but I also want it to have, quite a good profile.
Sherry, just a question in terms of the October magazine. So presumably we would not contribute to that?
That's right. Correct. Yeah, because caretaker.
Yeah,
We'd be candidates. So that's how the budget is based. The rest of it goes in design, printing.
But Kerry, just on, Mark's put out a good point actually, but what if someone's not running? Shouldn't they be able to have an opportunity of putting an article in the magazine, they're not running and they're speaking about their terms, 4 years, I think we should leave that open. That if a person signs a letter saying they're not running, they actually can put an article in, If they're not running, they're not going to be any legal, what's the word, no advantage to them if they're not running. So I think a person who's not running should be able to put an article in there. I don't know how anybody else feels.
Way in the world.
Why?
Well, because that person has pretty much editorial control. We don't let the staff touch our articles other than typos.
I think we already made just no word to touch it and have see if it needs changing.
So if a candidate in that article said,
I'm not a candidate, I didn't say I said if you're not running.
The councillor in that article chose to write, I'm fantastic and so are these people, but...
No, I don't think that is right what you're saying. I think that what I'm saying is the person's not going to run again. He wants to say, look, it's been great 4 years, I've achieved this, I'm not running, I need to,
How do you determine...
Because we agreed the CEO, whoever did about the magazine, is going to have a say in, you cannot write this, remember? We did say that. There'll be an editorial, the letters will be edited.
No, I don't agree. I think we disagreed that I could do that.
So it's caretaker mode and you just got...
Only yours and mine.
You could write a letter to the messenger group if you're revising it to. They could write a letter to the messenger.
During the caretaker period, it's very dangerous to have any elected member, no matter what status.
Even if you're being polite, you'll just cause merry hell to break loose.
The perception people out there, they don't understand. They just see, oh, it's just X has got one in there. Why haven't you got one?
Yeah, just don't go near it.
All right, outvoted. I agree. Don't worry about Mark.
Kerry?
That same caution would have to be to anyone writing an article, wouldn't it? None of us. I mean, anyone else.
The staff, any other writers?
Well, the staff or just people.
From the community, we call it community contribution.
Oh, okay. There's a couple of...
So what's going to happen to that?
I assume there's an article about the soccer in there. So if we come to the next one, the October one, and I forget that bloke, I think he won the yelled at me. But we put, this bloke puts an article in, David's the bee's knees and no one should be that. How do we...
I think we would editorial control over everything else.
So maybe it's just a magazine about elections, the role of council,
Rubbish.
and then...
Right.
Road.
So I was saying I was speaking rubbish. So it's rubbish, which is quite possible. Rubbish. So maybe it's just an article about, so we can really drive home what it is that council does. So each area gets a good say. So planning, you can have a really...
It's been like the last four, it doesn't matter, mine would come after elections anyway.
Christmas one yet?
No, you didn't get that one, isn't it?
Now we need to conclude this. Yeah?
Okay.
Carry on.
Just to say that under the Local Government Elections Act, we have the major responsibility to promote the election. EXA have the power to do so, and LGA has a responsibility to ensure they have a candidate webpage. So the short profile that people put in with their nominations can be extended and put onto the LGA candidate website, as you would remember from the last election. Now the LGA have just put out their promotional material, so they came out in the last week. and these are the costs associated with them.
Can you tell me in what context could we or would we be allowed to use a diorama?
At 42.86.
Why would there be a diorama?
Blokes use those. Sorry? I didn't think blokes used them.
What? Yeah.
What are you talking about, actually? I don't know what a diorama is. I see it here, and I can see it sort of like down.
3D model.
Oh, is it? Well, there you go. You could have one out the front.
Hasn't kind of.
There's one out the children. It's for schools of children, I think.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
That's not doing any. That aside,
For the ADHD residents,
Okay, Kerry, just push through. Push through.
okay. Councils do have an allocation of this material for free. We'd fall into the small category for councils. So we get 4 banners, 400 bookmarks, get 100 dioramas. We get some DL flyers, 400, and a few other things. So for my budget, I'm sticking with the free. Yes. And making the most of that. So don't worry about the cost of those up there. We did go ahead with our branding with Spiros to get a brochure out. So we're going to stick with that because it looks nice in the prospect. But we will try and incorporate some of this design in the future advertisements that we run. Yeah, that's one of them. It's similar in the messenger ad. So we can get leverage out of this because the LGA will be pushing this as well. So we want to sort of tie in with that. But we want to stick with ours.
it's really bad.
It is really bad.
Well, you can have those diaphragms and put them
I
in
have.
at the back of your car. Put them in the back of it.
In the old news building.
Yeah.
Okay, frequently, there will be a frequently asked questions sheet. Go on to the website. So if you get questions out that you can't out in the community that you can't answer about the election, please direct them to the website or to ring the office, and we'll be updating the FAQ sheet regularly. So as the questions come in, so that should work well, I think. The draft caretaker policy has been updated based on your feedback last week, and will be going up to the July council meeting. Now, just briefly, Councillor Barnett and Ginny and I went to a Kennedy Jones election breakfast last Friday.
What?
Election breakfast. And Kay Mousley from Exeter spoke there and raised the social media thing, which people are quite interested in. And they still haven't done anything. They do hope to get some documentation out before the election. And I'll let you know if anything comes of that.
Kerry, this stuff, I've got to say it's first I've seen it, but all these banners are really hard work because people don't see a need to read it. However, if we put a diagonal, very simple word across it, as soon as the postal votes have landed in people's letterboxes, it just simply says, vote, they'd work a lot better. You only do that in that 3 weeks, but it's like a call to action. It's just on the banners that are out in the streets.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, and we're doing one across the next messenger ad, which is only 2 weeks out from the close of enrolment.
Yep.
So same sort of thing.
They certainly don't tell you anything, do they?
No.
Health will. Spiros is doing our design.
That's my problem too.
It'll be a lot better. It'd be better if they had don't vote, it only encourages them. So that's just an update. If you've got any questions at any time, let me know. And I'll keep trying to update you via email in the meantime.
Right, I had 2 questions. One I'll be a bit shy to ask, so I might ask someone else that's closer to me, what all this social media thing is, because I use Facebook, but beyond that, but I do need some understanding of, because from the 16th, I think, the governor caretaker thing, from the 16th, then we couldn't use our computers after that, didn't we?
Well, your iPad?
Yeah.
You should.
Oh,
Well, you can for council,
yeah.
but not for campaigning yet.
See, this is where I think it's, again, the line.
Are you running or am I running? That couldn't say that. All right. Well, so there are questions in my head.
Put it in
You can come and meet with Kerry to work through that.
And the other one in my head is, there's a map here of the new wards, and in particular over the east one, because I'm here in Melbourne, that's where I run, and one of them is Stephen Street and Delaney Avenue. That borders one of it. So when you've got that, and there's a map in here, so does that mean one side of Stephen Street is one ward and the other side? So
Yeah, and
it's not the street, it's in the middle of the road.
yes, and that is detailed on the website, and we're actually trying to get a more detailed map. We just didn't have it in. Yeah. We did have it that size, but it's too busy, so we have to make it somehow look better. But yes, it is on that size, so odds and evens, and you can click onto the website and it will show you that. Also, if you go on the website, there's a very useful list of all the streets that are in each ward, because I'll be using that tomorrow night. But on the maps here, I don't think a lot of people, especially if they're new people here, won't know what council boundary is. It looks like that's the name of the road.
And it should be. One very long, funny shaped road.
Yeah.
Well, see,
So
there's an interesting one where you got your finger, because the ones on the other side of the road, the northern side, whose boundary are they in? Because they're part of Prospect.
Well, that's the middle of the, it's the
No, it's not in the middle of the road.
But that one's not in the middle of the road, that one's on the rear boundary of Livingston.
Back fences of Bird
Yeah.
and
Yes.
Yeah,
So that's just my. So when the more detailed map is ready, it will be.
And they've given us
that's very interesting too, that page.
a little bit extra of Port Adelaide
That
entry.
page is very interesting.
There's a road that the front, it's a road, what do you call
Oh,
it?
Livingston.
A cul-de-sac.
Yeah,
It's a
Ferguson.
cul-de-sac. Because it starts, they've cut all of the houses out and made them Prospect.
Yeah, we agreed.
We did that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we agreed with that.
We allowed that to happen.
Yes. But we should have made it 400 metres long.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
we
my
can-
last word?
Yeah,
One last
still
word.
going
Yeah.
Yeah.
One last word on social media,
Yeah.
because we've looked at social media from a particular angle for the issues that we've experienced here. But Kay Mousley, her main focus is when candidates are using social media to campaign, it's going to have to be the same. Like, you know, when you do it in writing, it has to be approved by and printed by. Then it needs to have that. And her comment also was if people are using Twitter, so that's what she said. So with Twitter, vote for me. 140 characters, you're gone. Yeah. So if you're campaigning on Twitter, you're probably going to go against the rules. Kerry, last time when I had my own website, so I made sure that on every page I had that authorised by and everything, because you could just somebody could just log on to a certain page, you know, and it's not there, and then that's right. So as candidates, going to have to do quite a lot.
She's saying every time a message goes somewhere, whether it be a poster not on a tree, or a tweet, or a balloon, it's got to have written authorised by.
Yes, if it's the same as, if it falls into that campaigning material.
At the shops.
Authorised by.
You just have to say, I'm at, written authorised by. It'll fit in.
Yeah. So that's, I just say that is where a lot of the work from EXA is going as far as social media goes. So as soon as I get anything, I will let you know.
So can I ask one maybe a tricky question on that, or maybe not? I have a Facebook page, if you haven't joined, feel free to join me up, Councillor Mark Group. Now, if I was to run again, I would have to remove the councillor component of that, wouldn't I?
Area.
Well, would you? I don't think you have to. Hearing or not. I would have thought.
I'd be using electioneering if I was to run.
I'm sorry, I took that question as being...
Yeah.
But you can certainly leave it as Councillor Mark Root if you want to do your normal council work on that.
You could set up a separate one.
Well,
Well, technically, you're still an area councillor.
You're still a councillor, so why can't you say I'm running for election, Councillor Bruce Priest or whatever? Why can't you still say, because you still are until when it closes the election?
But you shouldn't be electioneering on that basis with your council, like you wouldn't give out your business
State and
card.
federal parliamentarians do.
We're not talking about
I
that.
can't imagine how they can get involved outside. It's like saying from the day you get elected, you can't electioneer.
Exactly.
I would have thought you could election all the way until
Yeah, the
the end of nomination.
Just can't take advantage of council resources.
Oh, no.
But you can still use the word councillor, Councillor Bruce
That's
Pearce.
your title. Your title
Re-elect
is
council Bruce.
I would have thought you could elect. You could elect.
I think you
or
can.
mayor.
Electioneer for the whole 4 years of your incumbency until they close
They've
nomination.
done it quite well.
Clarification on
That's
that.
what, yeah. That's what it's about caretaker.
Yeah, exactly. But outside of caretaker,
Our eyes are glazing over.
Yeah, so you can
city councillor, whoever you like.
what I said then.
Not much of what you've said, actually, or not.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, enough of that. We can. Any more questions can go to Kerry direct. I think that's probably the way to go. Now, open discussion period. I know Christina was first in. Heritage CPA.
Yes. So my question, and some residents have asked me, what has happened to our heritage development assessment plan, and is there any progress made?
I'll have to take that question on notice. The most recent correspondence with the Department for Planning is that it's pending approval, but that could mean anything. So we'll contact the Department for Planning again and provide an update to all elected members on how it's travelling.
Thank you.
Both of them, both bits.
Yeah, just two with one. I don't want to discuss my two brothers here and their discussion they've had on emails, but it did leave me open to the calendar business and I'm happy that I come tonight because I feel confident now I've got one of these, Prospect Magazine, that I never did get an answer about the Christmas one that I didn't get, and I never got the answer for the next one, which was, I assume, March, when the Prospect Fair was on or whatever that came later. We were going to get on to Telstra or
Australia
Post or whatever and find out why they weren't delivered and all that. So
Some even got 2 deliveries, Alan.
Is that your calendar or your
magazine.
magazine? Oh, okay.
For the election,
I
2
don't think
deliveries
it's
outside, a couple of weeks later.
They've been inserted in the magazine.
Right, and we haven't got a magazine yet?
My understanding was the magazine was ready.
Well, that led me to my third question was, I read David's email to reply, and I just took a concern out. He did say some residents, sounds like it was himself, some residents have already got this, and I just got mine a minute ago. So when does it come to our area?
I haven't got mine yet either.
Have yours yet, David? Because I haven't had mine.
I haven't got mine.
Well, yeah, got delivered 2 days ago, and a resident contacted me last Wednesday last week. They got these.
So it seems to be a big gap of
I haven't got mine.
when they
I
come.
haven't got one.
It lives in
And I don't expect you to be able to answer me that tonight, Chris. But I just,
We have done some work on it.
Did you have your calendar in there, David? That's good.
We have done some work on it. Because it is delivered through Australia Post, the time frame for delivery isn't too entirely compressed, and it isn't that clear. It's a desired time frame, which is around 2 weeks, which gives plenty of scope for this very circumstance to occur. So we're exploring what alternative options are available to council, and part of the feedback through the annual business plan was that council should be considering what alternative options are available for the community magazine, and so the delivery component of that comes into that review process. So that'll be
Opportunity for Operation Flippers.
We had that discussion, didn't we, that opened it up to community groups.
Yeah, and I've spoken to some of them, and they're really keen to have a think about that.
okay, my last and not least, because there's a Royal Commission into see us and the unions, I can't indulge a lot of my comments, but the Mayor has raised at the time, and other people have raised about free advertising on some of our buildings and sites around, and one of them has been the signs on the opposite, I always call it Scotty's Corner, but outside of Scotty's Corner and that. And as you know, I think through Christina, yourself and others, has been raised about the buildings should or shouldn't be demolished and the land should be cleared up. And there's trucks that are sitting down there that they don't get used. They sit there and they advertise. And they sit around other places and they sit around and that. And I know certain things about the amount of people that work definitely with that machine. I'm not going to make those comments. But it's basically a free advertising on the corner right now. One bobcat came, spent, I reckon, 40 minutes scraping some marshmallow bushes down the back. Must have been too many caterpillars, so they went home again. And we've got...
Caterpillar bobcat?
No, it could have been.
A big truck.
But there's 3 of them sitting there, and I will say, on Marsh Demolition. And they're just sitting there. And they're free advertising. And if you went past over the weekend, you see all the vehicles there were all serviced down there. They haven't done any work there, but they've been fully greased up, oiled, washed down.
Ready for action.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
So,
Well, I can take that on notice and follow up with staff.
if they're doing the work, if they're doing stuff, all following with.
There is scope under the Development Act for temporary signage to be displayed advertising the particular builder who's performing the work. But when it falls over into, say, large shipping containers kept on site with particular
Vote for me.
aims even on the side,
Like a big banner that
there's scope for us to at least
5
ask.
by 10 metres wide that says C-bus, for instance,
Yeah.
which is what I look
have
at
got
every
some
day
that I can put in that.
on a big high-rise site in the city.
Okay, Mark and then Bruce.
Just a quick one. I'm not sure if anyone else read this in our Quality Capital paper from Ali Clark. It's relating to, she's talking about bureaucrats and councils, but she said here, it took 2 years of haranguing Prospect Council for them to do sense, cut it down and repair the path. This is in relation to a tree. 2 years of time, stress and pricing. So I'm just wondering whether we could just get a bit of a sense of whether anything in that's actually accurate. Have you seen that?
I have read it. Doesn't make any reference to what tree,
No.
etc. And I think it was a friend of hers. I think she wrote the article as well. So I'm not aware of any tree.
And it must have been a very narrow footpath.
One of them lives in Prospect.
Yeah, one of her friends. I just think it's one of those
No,
things.
one of those girls who lives in Prospect.
One of which girls?
The girls that write opinions for...
This is Ali Clark.
Yeah.
I don't think she either. It's just one of those things that's a throwaway line, but it kind of reflects on us, and I think we should challenge it if it's not right.
Dylan, just show me that.
Might be.
But if you challenge it, you're just giving her credence and she'll love it and do something again.
No, she's wrong though.
Well,
She's right.
Can I just jump in?
Yeah, go for it.
I agree. I think, Mark, in terms of improving our service standards, I think you could write and say, you know, what's the problem? I'm really interested to hear about it. And I suspect it's, well, hopefully, it's not our staff being pretty slow. I think it's just a very complicated issue. We've got thousands of footpaths that need repairing. How do we pick the first one that gets done? But anyway, I think you could make her accountable for the issues raised. The second thing is the LGA have penned a response to this because it's a red hot go at councils. And I looked at the first draft of it and I said, look, it's let's not be the victim in this. This woman is irate about a parking fine her babysitter got. And in my view, if you break the law, pay the fine. Right? Get on with your life. Okay. The rest of it's just a kind of a rant about interactions with council. So we've rewritten the LGA response, and I'm still really not happy that we even bother responding. What's interesting is what happened the next day, because down the side here, you'll see this is the comments that people put online, and they choose to print 2 or 3 of them. The next day, the comments were basically saying, listen, lady, those laws are put in place to suit everybody, and just because you can't comply with it, there's no reason to get upset. Pay the fine. And the other response was, the other long one was very, very similar. Down the bottom there was a little comment which wasn't so favourable to us. But it's funny, the population sorted her out by saying, for goodness sakes, get a life.
What paper is this in, Mark?
Advertise it.
What day?
The Monday, wasn't it?
The 7th. It's only yesterday.
So you see the...
Yeah, I remember.
response.
I never read it.
The LGA probably will respond, but it'll get lost in letters to the editor, and only cranky people read those letters. So if you want to respond to this sort of stuff, just jump straight online. This is a chance that your comment will get printed.
Well, I mean, it's
Is
just,
that what we do with tweets?
it's just into council bashing time, you know, and one of the
Well,
editors
You're right.
Would
You married to that
just-
Adelaide Crows footballer?
second comment said, you know, bashing councils is an Olympic sport.
Yes, yeah,
Bashing councils is a gold medal caddy.
yeah.
It's quite funny.
Yeah, I
All
love
right, we'll follow up on that. Bruce?
Oh, yeah.
Mark,
Got something, or he had his hand up?
Yeah, did everything that.
When's the urn going to be fixed? It's been like that for about 3 weeks, I think,
Which end? What?
in the kitchen. It's been broken for 3 weeks.
Cross-cutting.
3 weeks, Mark.
we can't
We're
afford
top
it.
of the agenda for tomorrow.
I had no idea it was broken.
Yeah, you now know how to use a tap after 6 years. Is that?
3 weeks that urn in the kitchen's been broken, Mark.
Did you break it?
The trouble with the child.
From my council allowance, although I am paid the last amount out of it.
All right. Anything else from anyone? If not, no.
I just can't remember.
Okay.
I'll close the meeting quickly.
Quick, close.
Thanks very much. It's a good workshop. So we.
Turn off.
Oh yeah, he's quite.
You know,